After my business failed, my friends began to avoid me, and my wife came home later and later. At 3 a.m. that day, my wife had just returned home when I received a photo of her lying with another man. I used to be very successful. My business was booming, and I was surrounded by a group of friends and relatives who all praised me highly. However, the twists and turns of fate always come so unexpectedly. The business failed miserably, and I fell from a wealthy and successful person into a desperate situation. My former friends left me one after another, and even my wife began to become distant and did things that made me extremely angry. That night was almost a turning point in my life. It was 3 a.m., and my wife hadn't come home yet. This had never happened before. I was so anxious that I kept calling her 10 or 20 times, but couldn't get through. I had never felt so helpless, and I was deeply worried about whether something had happened to her. At this time, I received an anonymous message. I opened it and saw that it was a photo of my wife being intimate with a man. I was very angry. 7 years of marriage, once smooth as water, a lovely daughter, family harmony. Although my business failed recently, I always thought my wife was not the kind of person who would betray me for money. Finally, when I was about to go out to find her, I heard her staggering footsteps outside the door. She stood at the door, her cheeks flushed and her eyes blurry, obviously having drunk a lot of alcohol. She always complained about my drinking, but tonight she got herself drunk and kept delaying coming home. I began to feel uneasy. Could all this be related to my business failure? When I saw the strawberry marks on her neck, at that moment, I seemed to understand something. I began to doubt. My wife tried to respond calmly, explaining that the strawberry on her neck was a prank by a colleague. I was stunned. This is impossible? My wife would not betray me. But when I saw the strawberry marks on her neck, my heart sank. I sat on the sofa, feeling extremely anxious, wanting to ask for clarification, but she ignored me and went straight into the bathroom to take a shower. My mind was in a mess. What on earth was this strawberry mark? I couldn't imagine what I would do if it was really a betrayal. My wife came out of the shower, and the marks on her neck were more obvious. I couldn't help but say, "Boss Wong is calling you." Her reaction instantly chilled my heart, and the panic in her eyes was quickly concealed. I was stunned. Did she really betray me? I decided to find out the truth, so I took out a mirror, pointed at the strawberries on her neck, and asked, "What's going on?" She looked at it and replied, "It's from that crazy woman Lu Yanfeng." She said it lightly, as if it was just a trivial matter. However, I was already feeling agitated. She spoke so naturally that I was suspicious. She didn't even wait for me to ask more questions, but went back to her room and ignored me. My mind was in a mess. The recent stress and failure made me constantly speculate about every detail about her. When she lay down and took out her phone, I saw her grinning at it. I couldn't help but walk over and found that she was chatting with Lu Yanfeng. I was stunned for a moment, and my heart was even more furious. There were still strawberry marks on her neck, and Mr. Wong also called me. All this made me completely unable to calm down. I walked over quickly, and she immediately turned off her phone and lay down with her back to me. I suppressed my anger, and my mind was full of images of her being with another man, so I rushed over. She pushed me away and told me fiercely not to touch her. My anger was overwhelming, and I almost lost control. The next morning, my wife did not make breakfast for me as usual, but quietly put on makeup. I felt a little uneasy. Although she was still beautiful, I felt uneasy. She told me that she had to work overtime tonight and would be home very late, and I was full of doubts. However, I noticed that she had forgotten to take her bag when she left in a hurry. Holding her bag, I quickly chased after her and saw her get into a black Mercedes-Benz as soon as she got in. At that moment, my heart seemed to be hit hard. Who was the person in the Mercedes-Benz? I began to have doubts in my heart. I called her and asked where she was. She responded coldly that a colleague had picked her up to go to work. Her hurried tone and the man's voice on the other end of the phone made me increasingly suspicious that her betrayal was no longer accidental. When I got home, I threw her bag on the bed, my heart filled with anger and pain. I took out a pack of safety measures from the bag, and there were only 6 left. My heart sank completely. I couldn't help but think, I have given so much. Why did she do this to me? Suddenly my cell phone rang. It was my daughter. Her coquettish voice calmed me down a little. But then came a call from my mother-in-law demanding payment. She kept asking me to give her 5,000 yuan, saying that she wanted to enroll her grandson in an interest class. I felt more and more depressed. After the business failed, life became so difficult. I tried to suppress my anger, but I was still confused. Just as I was about to make a decision, the doorbell rang. The doorbell suddenly rang. breaking the dead silence. Through the peephole, I saw a woman in a black business suit and heavy makeup. Although her temperament is not as good as my wife's, she is still charming. This is my wife's best friend and colleague, Lu Yinfeng. I was confused. What is she doing here? I opened the door and let her in. She smiled and nodded at me. I have something here with you, yeah. Come and get it. I was a little puzzled. She didn't tell me? She replied, oh, I put the things in her bag last night. My heart tightened. Could those Durex belong to my wife? Many speculations emerged in my mind. At this time, my wife called me and said, Lu Yinfeng has a diamond ring in my bag. Can you help me give it to her? She actually asked me to give her the things in the bag. Wasn't she afraid that I might find something? I opened the bag and found a diamond ring. In addition, there was also a thin woman's dress with a faint fragrance. It was not my wife's. I handed my wife's bag to Lu Yinfeng and said, take a look for yourself. She took the bag, took out the diamond ring, and casually looked at the safety measures and stockings in the bag. Her face suddenly turned red. Was it your birthday yesterday? I asked tentatively. She smiled awkwardly. Yes. If nothing else, I'll leave first. After that, she took the things away and left with a hint of embarrassment in her smile. I was the only one left in the empty room, feeling mixed emotions. My mind was in a mess, and I couldn't understand what my wife was doing. In the next few days, my life seemed to be shrouded in a dark cloud. I worked in Lingling Plumbing Shop. Lingling had helped me when my business failed. She invested in the shop and gave it to me, making me the manager. The treatment is good, the salary is guaranteed, 10,000 yuan per month, and there are commissions for good performance. Although the failure of the business made me immersed in the trough, Ling Ling's help made me feel a little warm. However, recently, I found that people around me looked at me more and more strangely, as if they were hiding something in their hearts. I couldn't help but ask the clerk next door, Lu Jinhui, and he whispered, Johnson, there is something I need to tell you, and you may be angry. My heart sank. Go ahead, he whispered. I saw my sister-in-law and a man enter the Super 8 hotel last night. Hearing this, I was struck by lightning. All my doubts and pains burst out at once, and my mind went blank. Almost everyone in the city knew about her affair, and I was the only one who was still in the dark. I asked angrily, are you sure you saw her? Lu Jinhui nodded. Johnson, it's true. I dare not say anything. At that moment, my heart was broken, and all the anger and disappointment gathered into an indescribable emotion. I couldn't help but wonder, what on earth did my wife do outside? The days seemed to stop flowing, and I began to frantically look for evidence. That night, I decided to go to my wife's company to see with my own eyes whether she was working overtime or had other reasons. When I arrived downstairs at the Mariah Group, the doubts in my heart grew stronger. I bought some of her favorite snacks, thinking that if she really worked overtime, it would be a small consolation. When I walked into the company building, the light in my wife's office was still on, and it seemed that she was indeed working overtime. I breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that she had not lied. However, as soon as I walked to the office door, I saw a man in a suit walking out of her office. He glanced at me with an unnatural expression. I had a bad feeling in my heart. His clothes were disheveled, and he smelled like my wife's perfume. My heartbeat quickened, and I immediately thought of what happened between my wife and this man in the office. I walked to the office door and knocked, and my wife gently asked me to come in. When she saw me, she was a little surprised, but she quickly recovered and asked me, why are you here? I put down the snacks in my hand and replied softly, I'm afraid you're tired, so I came to bring you something. She looked at me and smiled. Thank you, honey. However, the smell in the room was a little strange, and I sensed a fishy smell. I turned and looked at the trash can and found a bunch of crumpled paper towels in it. The doubts in my mind deepened. I couldn't help but ask, I have something to ask you. This morning I saw a package of unsealed safety measures in your bag. My wife seemed very surprised. How could there be such a thing? It must have been put there by Lu Yinfeng as a prank. She explained. I stared into her eyes, feeling mixed emotions. She didn't avoid my gaze and didn't seem to be panicked, but her explanation was still hard for me to accept. Just then, she came up to me, put her arms around my neck, and whispered, Honey, do you believe me? I was just about to get closer to my wife and smell her when suddenly she stood up and left the office. Where are you going? I couldn't help asking. She replied with a straight face, to the bathroom, and to clean up a bit. She walked out of the office, and I continued to wander around. As she left, I smelled a faint smell of cigarette smoke, which came directly from her body. At this moment, my heart was full of suspicion and anger, but I could only suppress it and wait for her to come back. Without solid evidence, she would definitely not admit it. But as time passed, I began to feel uneasy. 10 minutes passed, and my wife still hadn't come back. I couldn't help it, so I walked out of the office and walked along the corridor to the bathroom. I vaguely heard her talking on the phone. The voice on the other end was unclear, but I could make out what she said. My husband is here, so I won't go out tonight. I was panicked and walked closer immediately. Suddenly, the bathroom door opened, and my wife saw me standing at the door and screamed, "Are you going to scare me to death?" I asked calmly, "Who are you talking to on the phone?" She answered impatiently, "Who else? A colleague." Then she picked up the broom and walked back to the office. I followed her closely, doubting what she had just said. She said it was a colleague, but I didn't think so. When she put down the broom, I took the opportunity to pick up her phone and try to check her call records. My wife was bent over to sort out the garbage and didn't notice me at all. After she finished, she walked out with the trash can. I usually take out the trash for her, but today she took the initiative to do it. This action made me suspicious. I took her phone and tried to open it to check the call records, but the password was wrong. My wife changed her phone password, and I could no longer remember her new password. Before I could think about it, my wife turned around and walked back. When she saw me holding her phone, a flash of panic flashed in her eyes, but she quickly regained her composure. She reached out to take the phone back. "Give me the phone." I didn't give it to her right away. "Did you change your password?" I asked. She simply replied, "Yes, I did." She reached out to grab the phone, and I didn't stop her. She walked to the door, picked up the trash can, and prepared to take out the trash. "I'll just go take it out." Her tone seemed a little hurried, and I was a little confused, so I followed her out. Downstairs, I opened the garbage bag and prepared to look through it carefully. As I was looking through it, a security guard suddenly came over. I felt a little embarrassed and quickly threw the garbage into the trash can. "Which department are you from? Why haven't I seen you before?" The security guard suddenly asked in a stiff tone. I frowned slightly. "Hello, my name is Johnson. I'm Jessica's husband, and I'm here to look for my wife." The security guard didn't give me a chance to explain. "Come with me, let me check." His attitude made me feel uneasy. I immediately realized that things were not that simple. I was a little hesitant, but still agreed. "Wait, I'll make a call." I picked up the phone and was about to call my wife, but the security guard interrupted me at this time. "Come back to the security room with me and register first." I was a little puzzled. I have already registered before I came in. But he ignored me and insisted that I go with him. I followed the security guard to the security room. Along the way, I began to feel anxious. My wife was still on the phone for nearly half an hour. I couldn't help but wonder, who was she on the phone with, and why hadn't the call ended for so long? After entering the security room, another security guard began to interrogate me. "What's your name? What are you doing in the company?" I patiently answered, "My name is Johnson. I'm Jessica's husband, and I'm here to see my wife." The security guard's attitude became worse and worse, and he seemed not to believe me at all. He continued to make things difficult. "How do you prove that Manager Lee is your wife?" I was a little anxious. "She is in the office. I can take you to find her." I felt that things were starting to get complicated. The security guard was obviously deliberately making things difficult for me, and this made me more and more suspicious of my wife's behavior. According to company regulations, strangers are not allowed to enter the office area, and relatives must be accompanied by a leader. I was so angry that I was about to explode. I was clearly able to get in just now, so why can't I get in now? "Mr. Huang, call Manager Lee to pick you up." I picked up my phone in anger and called my wife again, but the call was still busy. Almost 20 minutes had passed. Who was she talking to? Why didn't she answer my call? The security guard looked suspicious, as if he was questioning whether I was Jessica's husband. I was anxious, wondering what my wife was doing. I tried to call again, but she didn't answer. The atmosphere in the office felt even more wrong. Finally, the call was connected, and my wife asked anxiously, "Where have you been? Why did you take out the trash for so long?" I angrily asked back, "I just went downstairs to take out the trash, but your security guard invited me into the security room. Why can't I get through to you? Who were you talking to that took so long?" She said calmly, "I'll pick you up." Then she hung up the phone. I felt disappointed. She should have given me an explanation, but she just avoided my questions with a few simple words. I stayed in the security room for more than 10 minutes, but my wife still didn't come. I started to get anxious and considered calling her again to urge her. Finally, my wife showed up and explained the situation to the security guard, who let me go. When I walked up to her, I found that her perfume smelled even stronger, but mixed with a hint of sweat. The strange thing was that she didn't do any strenuous exercise, so how could she sweat so much? I couldn't help but ask, Who were you talking to on the phone just now? Why did it take so long? She answered casually, Lu Yinfo. I got angry. How could a phone call take so long? She pouted, put the phone in her bag, and looked a little impatient. I deliberately moved closer to her, wanted to smell her again and see if there was any other smell. But she pushed me away and gave me a blank look. Can you be more serious? Her reaction made me feel a little uneasy, as if she was deliberately avoiding me. Then she told me, I still have to work overtime, so I'll go back first. I looked at the time, and it was already 8:15 p.m. You still have more than an hour to get off work, and I have nothing to do at home, so why don't we go back together later? I said deliberately, thinking about going to her office to take a look. She subconsciously refused. No. But soon she came back to normal and said, if you want to wait, then wait. She seemed a little unhappy, turned around and quickened her pace to walk forward, as if I was interfering with her. I felt heavy-hearted and really wanted to know if she had betrayed me. Then I'll go back first, I said, pretending not to care. Her tone suddenly softened. Otherwise, let's go back together later. Her attitude was unpredictable, and I could no longer be sure what she was thinking. She originally didn't want me to wait for her after get off work, but now she took the initiative to ask me to do so, which made me suspicious. Women's minds are really hard to guess. I decided not to insist. I'm afraid of disturbing your work, so I'd better go back first. I turned around and prepared to leave, thinking that I would wait outside the company to see what she was doing. Well, you go back first, be careful on the road. She glanced at me and said softly. When I was about to leave, I said, I'm a little thirsty. I'll go upstairs and have a cup of tea before going back. She nodded, and I followed her into the elevator. The scent of my wife's perfume is still charming, and a hint of doubt arises in my mind again. The red mark on her neck is no longer so obvious, but I still have a doubt in my mind. The elevator went downstairs, and she walked into the office and continued working. I looked around and accidentally saw a ball of tissues in the trash can of the public toilet. Inside was a pack of unsealed safety measures packaging, which was clearly a certain brand of condoms. I stared at the trash can in a daze, and a chill ran down my spine. I continued to follow my wife to her office. She gently pushed open the door, and the room was filled with a strong smell of perfume, the same scent she had just smelled. The smell was stronger than when I came in, and it was obvious that she was trying to hide something. The office was very clean, which didn't match her explanation that she was on the phone. This made me wonder what she had done with that other man. I was confused. After 7 years of marriage, it turned out like this. I watched my wife busy pouring water. She looked natural, and nothing unusual happened. Were you cleaning the office? I asked. She replied, well, what happened? It's all your fault for knocking over the trash can. It smelled bad, so I sprayed a little more perfume. She turned her head to put on her lipstick naturally, looking calm. After a few seconds, she lowered her head and continued working. I was full of questions and couldn't help but ask her directly, what are the safety measures in public toilets? But I swallowed the words back when they came to my lips. I know that even if something happened between her and the man, she would never admit it, and she would continue to live with a clear conscience. I watched her working with her head down, and my mind was full of thoughts. She was beautiful and elegant, and many men might be attracted by her charm. She once told me that I was her first love and her first man. But we didn't have any bleeding on our wedding night, and the reason she gave was simple. I loved sports when I was a kid, nothing special. I took a sip of tea from the cup and looked around to make sure there was nothing unusual. I nodded and prepared to leave. I'll go back first. I put down the cup, and she simply responded, well, be careful on the road. I left the office. However, when I walked out of the company building, I felt something was wrong behind me. I turned around and saw that the security guard who took me to the security room was staring at me in the booth. When he saw me turn around, he hurriedly avoided my gaze. I couldn't help but feel suspicious. I hailed a taxi and decided to walk a little before returning to my wife's company. I came to the parking lot downstairs of the company, where there was an exit that my wife had to pass through when she left. I bought a bottle of water at the nearby store, but I couldn't help but think of the condom boxes in the trash cans of public toilets. Soon, a red car drove out slowly. The license plate number looked familiar to me. Sure enough, it was my wife's car. I remembered that she had just told me that she would work overtime, but I didn't expect that she had already left the company. My heart sank instantly, and I felt that things were developing in a direction that I didn't want to see. I quickly put out my cigarette, hailed a taxi, and followed her. I began to feel uneasy and wanted to find out who she was with. After the call was connected, my wife took a long time to pick up the phone. There was a hint of impatience in her voice. What's wrong? I pretended to be calm. I lost my wallet. I checked to see if it's with you. After responding a few words, she hung up the phone in a hurry. My heart was getting heavier and heavier, and I began to doubt her lies. She said she was working overtime at the company, but she left early. Her quick hanging up the phone revealed something. I stared at her car, and in a flash I saw her crossing the traffic light, and I couldn't catch up in time. At that moment, anxiety and anger intertwined, and I could almost hear the sound of my heartbeat. Finally, her car drove into the community and parked in the underground garage. I followed her and returned home with a heavy heart. When she came in, I pretended to be surprised. "Aren't you still working overtime at the company?" But she replied calmly, "I was tired and came back early." I could feel her perfunctory attitude, but I had no way to refute it. When she went into the bathroom, I took the opportunity to pick up her phone and try to find some clues. The password on her phone screen was the date of our wedding anniversary. When she told me this, I had already begun to doubt her behavior and had a growing sense of foreboding. When she was taking a shower, she didn't bring her phone with her. I suddenly noticed some unusual marks on her underwear, which seemed to be written in some words. My heart ached, and I knew that things seemed to be far more complicated than they seemed. I temporarily suppressed my anger and decided to continue observing. At this time, my wife came out of the bathroom, and I noticed that she looked a little unnatural. She asked me casually, "Go pick up my sister tomorrow." I nodded, but in my mind I was thinking about how to reveal this line next. She didn't seem to notice at all, and my doubts deepened, and the depression in my heart became more obvious. It was late at night, and she was still busy in the living room. When I came out of the room, she quickly put away her phone, as if she was feeling guilty. I couldn't help but ask, "Who are you talking to so late?" She yawned and answered me, "I'm going to sleep." But I knew in my heart that tonight's events were far from over. It was late at night. I sat on the sofa, lit a cigarette, took a sip of wine, and tried to calm my inner turmoil. My wife had already fallen asleep and didn't notice that I sat on the bed, and even accidentally pressed her hair. I gently called her wife, but she still didn't respond. I picked up her phone, entered our wedding anniversary, and successfully unlocked it. I opened WeChat, and there was no ambiguous conversation. The call logs were cleared, and I couldn't find the time points I remembered. After searching for several minutes without finding any useful evidence, I put my phone down. I wanted to check her cloud files again. Maybe I could find something. After opening it, I was stunned. The screen showed artistic photos of my wife. She was wearing very little and in a seductive pose. I had never seen such photos before. Where did she take these photos? Could it be taken by a man? There is a kind of unknown secret in those photos. My emotions became increasingly complicated, with anger and anxiety intertwined. I couldn't help but forward her photos to my phone and delete the records. She actually took so many photos which I had never seen before, and they were obviously not for me. These photos were probably for her lover. My anger was about to explode, but I didn't think too much about it. Put down my phone and decided not to endure it any longer. My wife was sleeping soundly. She didn't resist, and gradually I took control of the whole situation. The next morning, she got up early and made breakfast for me with a gentle smile. I was stunned by the change. I couldn't understand why she suddenly became so gentle. She called me softly, "Husband, it's time for breakfast." At that moment, my heart was in turmoil. The voice of "take medicine" echoed in my mind, and I felt uneasy. After breakfast, she told me that she was going to pick up her sister today. She looked relaxed and natural when she left, totally unlike the way she was the night before. This unusual change made me even more suspicious and confused. In the afternoon, a fashionable woman came to the store. She was about 30 years old and wore heavy makeup. After entering the store, she asked me to help her choose a faucet and asked me to install it at her home. I agreed because it was not difficult for me. She took me to the nearby community, stealing glances at me from time to time along the way, with a slightly teasing look in her eyes. Arriving at her house, as soon as I opened the door, a familiar scent hit my nose, which was very similar to the perfume my wife usually used. Feeling uneasy, I stared at her warily, thinking that this might just be a coincidence. The woman directed me to the bathroom to change the faucet. When I lowered my head to work, she suddenly appeared at the door, wearing pink pajamas and with ambiguous eyes. At that moment, my heartbeat quickened, and I knew that this was definitely not an ordinary request. I subconsciously felt that there was something wrong. She looked at me with an obvious teasing look. "Can you chat with me for a while?" She smiled creepily. I saw a red dot on the ceiling and suddenly realized that it might be a pinhole camera, facing the bathroom at just the right angle. My intuition told me that all this seemed to be carefully designed. I have to go now. You can send the money for the faucet to my shop, I said, and decisively pushed her away, packed up my tools, and prepared to leave. She still stood at the door, trying to keep me. I didn't say anything more and walked out of her house without looking back. Back at the store, I was confused. The woman's perfume smelled almost the same as my wife's, which made me wonder if there was some unknown secret behind my wife. I didn't dare to think about it any further, because if that was the case, things would be too complicated. Just then, my wife called and reminded me to pick up her sister. She also told me that she would not be home that night and asked me to take my sister-in-law out for dinner. With a heavy heart, I packed up and prepared to go out to pick up her sister at the airport. I remember meeting Lee Xinyue 3 years ago when she was still a young girl. The taxi was driving slowly in the drizzle. People outside the window were walking with umbrellas, but I was anxiously thinking about the upcoming meeting. Lee Xinyue's flight finally arrived. She walked out of the airport dragging 2 suitcases. I was stunned at that moment. I almost thought it was my wife. The 2 sisters looked like twins. Lee Xinyue is no longer the ignorant little girl. Her temperament is pure and lovely, and she has become more charming. When she saw me, she greeted me enthusiastically. "Brother-in-law," I responded with a smile. "Long time no see. You're getting more and more beautiful." Her face flushed, and she looked a little embarrassed. Walking to the parking lot with Lee Xinyue, I always had some complicated feelings in my heart. She told me that she had recently found a new job, and it turned out to be the secretary of the vice president of the Mariah Group. She had just graduated and had no work experience, but she jumped directly into the 10th largest company in the city. The secretary of the vice president? Could it be Anthony? My doubts were getting heavier and heavier. Thinking that she would live in my house, I prepared a room for her. While I was tidying up the room, Lee Xinyue took out a red women's bag from under the bed. The bag was quite heavy. What was inside? The moment I opened the bag, my heartbeat quickened and I felt uneasy. In the bag were some women's toys and transparent clothes, which were obviously used. These things are not mine. They must belong to my wife. Lee Xinyue's cheeks flushed, and she turned around to continue cleaning. The air was filled with awkwardness. I put the things back in the room, and I was furious. How could there be such things? What on earth did she do outside? In the evening, I was planning to cook by myself, but Lee Xinyue offered to help. Not only was she a first-rate cook, but she also quietly returned to her room after dinner, leaving me alone in the living room, feeling restless. As I waited for my wife to come back, I was filled with anxiety and uneasiness, suspecting that she would cheat again tonight. After waiting for a long time, my wife finally came home, and she smelled of alcohol. It was obvious that she had been drinking again. She looked exhausted. Her eyes were red and swollen, and her face was pale. I silently suppressed my anger, poured her a glass of water, and asked coldly, "Why do you drink so late every day?" She explained that the company was celebrating a big order, but I didn't believe it. She stood up, suddenly put her hands around my neck, and kissed me gently. I could almost smell the alcohol and cigarettes on her. At this time, Lee Xinyue took out the red bag from under the bed and put it on the table. She looked at me with an unclear look, obviously knowing what was in the bag. My heart tightened. Lee Xinyue obviously wanted her sister to see these things on purpose to stir up trouble. After seeing the bag, my wife was stunned for a moment. Then she said calmly, "Something happened at the company, so I came back late. But I knew that it was not mine, and everything was going in a direction I didn't want to see." Lee Xinyue's suspicious eyes made me even more confused. She asked me doubtfully, "Brother-in-law, are you bullying my sister?" My mind went blank. I didn't expect her to say something like this out of the blue. I tried to explain, but found myself completely confused by her words. Lee Xinyue continued, "As long as you break up with that woman, I won't tell my sister." I was stunned. This turn of events made me completely confused. Why would she say that? "Brother-in-law, don't deny it. Look." My sister-in-law took out her cell phone. On the screen was a photo of Ling Ling and I walking in the park. Ling Ling is my boss and benefactor. I didn't have too many improper thoughts about her. After all, she has been single for many years and has always been my supporter in the workplace. "How did you get this photo?" I frowned. I didn't understand why my wife cheated on me and I ended up having a woman. "I saw it on the internet." Her tone was a little suspicious. "She is your boss? Does your sister know?" I felt helpless. Can such a photo push me to someone outside? I really don't understand her logic. She is indeed my boss and my benefactor. Your sister should know. I sighed and was too lazy to explain too much. My sister-in-law's suspicion. How can she easily draw a conclusion without thinking deeply? "Oh, I misunderstood you." She finally lowered her head in embarrassment, but then added, "Why did you put these things back? Are you afraid that your sister will know?" As she said that, her face turned slightly red. "I've already dealt with it. This is just an empty bag." I waved my hand to indicate that I had dealt with it. "How can you accuse me of having an affair based on these empty bags? Just based on these, you think I'm having an affair?" I stepped forward and asked in a low voice. The sudden approach made her stunned. In the next second, she subconsciously took a few steps back. "Have you seen me have close contact with other women? Don't jump to conclusions about some things." I stared at her with a steady tone, as if I could see through her mind. Ah, my sister-in-law was choked by my words, and a trace of embarrassment appeared on her face. Obviously, there was no evidence to support her suspicion. And after I married Jessica, I had no relationship with other women except her. She turned back to her room with a red face and slammed the door. I sat in the living room with mixed feelings, waiting for my wife to come out and see what she would do. About half an hour later, my wife came out of the bathroom and sat next to me wrapped in a bath towel. "I remember we don't have this bag at home." I deliberately pointed to the bag on the table, but I felt uneasy. "Oh, this is my mother's. She forgot to take it back before. I'll ask her to take it tomorrow." Her explanation startled me. My mother-in-law has always had a bad relationship with my father-in-law. I know she had an affair before. How could such a bag be thrown under the bed? It's so strange. My wife didn't continue to explain. She just said lightly, "Honey, I'm tired and I have to get up early tomorrow." After that, she went back to the room, leaving me alone with the red bag. Will my mother-in-law leave something like this here? She lived here for a short time, but never lived in this room. Could it be that this is really my mother-in-law's bag? Her life is no longer the same as before, and I have doubts in my heart. Maybe my wife inherited some of her habits? I have to find out who that man is, Anthony. Through investigation, I found that Anthony is the vice president of the Mariah Group. This person is not simple. He has a strong position and a strong background. But no matter what, I must have evidence first. I am not an impulsive person, and speculation without evidence is just asking for trouble. After drinking water, I returned to the room and saw my wife lying on the bed playing with her mobile phone. I walked over quietly and blew gently into her ear. She seemed to have known I would come. A WeChat message flashed across the black screen of her phone, and I could vaguely see the word baby. "Who sent you a message so late?" I raised my eyebrows and asked her. "My mom." My wife replied indifferently, and there seemed to be nothing unusual. I picked up the phone and looked at it. The WeChat avatar was indeed my mother-in-law's. She put the phone on the bedside table and turned her back to me. Suddenly, I noticed that her phone was turned off. She never turned it off at ordinary times. This made me wonder what happened tonight. The room was silent at this time. My wife seemed not to want to talk to me anymore, and I was also entangled with a trace of uneasiness. Not long after, I got up and went to the bathroom, as if I had not seen my wife. The room was empty, and only my doubts were growing. At the door of the bathroom, I vaguely heard my wife's voice, talking to someone in a gentle tone. "I've been busy these days and don't have time to accompany you." Only then did I realize who she was talking to late at night. My wife's voice is quite gentle. Who can I talk to on the phone in the middle of the night? I heard the sound of flushing and quickly stepped back. She opened the bathroom door, and I was standing right in the doorway. "Ah!" She was startled by me and screamed, and the phone in her hand fell to the ground. The phone screen, which was on just now, turned black instantly as the phone fell to the ground. "You're going to scare me to death." My wife was still in shock and spoke to me angrily. "Who are you calling so late at night?" I couldn't stand it anymore, so I confronted my wife. Who else could it be? That crazy woman Lu Yinfeng, who stayed up late at night to call me and chat with me. The wife squatted down gracefully, picked up the phone gently, and wanted to turn it on, but found that the screen was broken. "It's all your fault. My phone is broken. It would be better if it wasn't broken, so I could see if she was lying. Go to bed early." The wife said this and walked into the room cursing. Turning around and looking at her back, Lu Yinfeng would call her so late? She also said that she was busy recently and had no time to accompany her, waiting for ambiguous words. I don't like this woman named Lu Yinfeng. After my wife used her as a shield many times, I felt an inexplicable disgust towards this woman. I now began to suspect that Lu Yinfeng had led my wife astray. Lu Yinfeng, a woman who pursues material things and lives a chaotic life, had once been the mistress of an old man in his 60s and eventually received a large sum of breakup fees because of a falling out. She changes boyfriends every week, and I have seen her flirting with countless men in the past 3 years. Recently, I saw her go to the cinema with a man who was not her current boyfriend. After drinking the water, I walked into the room and my wife was already asleep. Her mobile phone screen was broken, but I had a question in my mind. Was she really talking to Lu Yin phone just now? This night, I tossed and turned, unable to sleep. My wife slept very soundly, and she hugged me from time to time, as if nothing had happened. I don't know how long it took, but the sky finally dawned. I felt exhausted, but my wife was refreshed and got up early to make breakfast for me. I used to make breakfast for her, but she suddenly made it today. Was it because she felt guilty and wanted to make up for it? My sister-in-law also got up early. She had an interview at Milai Company today. It was called an interview, but it was actually a formality. Shinue, eat quickly. Come with me later. My wife urged her sister-in-law, who was still in the bathroom while eating. I heard that you recommended Shinue to Mariah Company. I asked casually, and my wife suddenly became unnatural. Well, the vice president just happened to be short of an assistant. I asked Shinue to try and see if she can pass. She tried to calm down, but still seemed a little nervous. Honey, Anthony is my boss, and I gave him a gift. It should be okay. Her words made my heart tighten. Thinking of the details I saw that day, I couldn't help but worry. Honey, if it's okay, I have to go to work. My wife urged my sister-in-law and took her away from home, leaving me alone. I sorted out my things, and my phone suddenly rang. It was my sister-in-law's WeChat. Brother-in-law, I'm so sorry for last night. I shouldn't have blamed you wrongly. The shy expression attached made me feel a little helpless. It's okay. After a simple reply, I left home. My wife mentioned that she would go on a business trip to the next city in a few days, and I couldn't help but wonder if Anthony would go with her. Ling Ling is my good friend and also has a senior position in Mariah Group. I want to know if Anthony is going to Jongbei City too, so I can ask her. Although I have doubts in my heart, I don't want to pry rashly. Not surprisingly, my sister-in-law successfully applied for the job. It seems that this was arranged. My heart is full of anger. If my wife really betrayed me, I will never let them go easily. As soon as I opened the door of the store, Ling Ling walked in. She is a cold and beautiful woman, and the red mole between her eyebrows is particularly eye-catching. She was wearing a white dress, and her whole person was as cold as an iceberg. Ajuan, how are you recently? Same as always, but you are much more energetic recently. We exchanged a few pleasantries, and Ling Ling went straight to the point. Ajuan, I need your help with something. Sister Ling, what is it? There is an order in Jongbei City that could have been taken, but the other party suddenly regretted it. The company has been frequently transferred recently, and I can't get away. Can you help me go over and take a look? Ling Ling paused and continued. This order is very important to me. I don't feel at ease letting others go. Jongbei City? Isn't my wife going there on a business trip too? I was grateful to Ling Ling for helping me in my predicament. This order was important to her, so I naturally would not refuse. I can help, but I only work for you. Okay, then I'll leave it to you. I prepared the information, and there's also a competitor, Anthony. Anthony? My heart was shocked. Anthony, this name set off waves in my heart. He has an evil mind and uses any means. Ling Ling's words made me more alert. Sister Ling, is Anthony going to Jongbei City these days? Yes. Her confirmed answer made my heart tighten. I was almost certain that my wife and Anthony might have had an affair that could not be told. Sister Ling, do you have more information about Anthony? Yes, I'll send it to you later. Okay. Ling Ling and I walked on the street with mixed feelings. Everything was developing in the direction I least wanted to see. My wife and Anthony went to Jongbei City, and it must be a honeymoon. Ling Ling told me that Anthony had a mistress outside, and that person was a subordinate, but she didn't know who it was. This deeply hurt my heart. Does his wife know? Ling Ling shook her head. I don't know. I secretly speculated that the mistress was probably my wife. The picture of my wife and Anthony together in my imagination made me furious. Ajuan, I have something else to do at the company. I have to leave first. Ling Ling said goodbye in a hurry and told me to give me the list of Jongbei. Not long after she got in the car and left, I received a transfer with a note, Jongbei Activity Funds. Ling Ling was so considerate. I took a deep breath, tried to calm down, and prepared to face the next storm. A familiar customer came into the store. She was the woman whose faucet I had replaced before. Boss, your faucet is really bad. It broke after just 2 days of use, she said angrily. That was a national standard faucet, and this situation was impossible. In addition to what happened in her home before, I was wary of her. The faucets we sold have never had any problems. She looked at me, seemingly not paying attention to what I said, but slowly approached, and the fragrance filled my nose. She lifted her long hair and got closer and closer, making me uncomfortable. Who asked you to come? I don't understand why a woman would look for a man like me who doesn't have much money, especially when I found a camera in her home. Who asked you to come? You think too much. She was stunned, but soon recovered and smiled. My husband is not at home. I'm a little bored, and I want to find someone to chat. Then you found the wrong person. I'm not that kind of person. She smiled and said, Am I so unattractive? It has nothing to do with charm. Okay, then I'll find someone else. She turned away disappointedly. This woman is just a small episode. After delivering the goods, it was already late. I returned home, and my sister-in-law prepared a sumptuous dinner. Steamed lobster, cola chicken wings, kung pao chicken, everything, and wine, saying that she was thanking my wife for helping her find a job. She was busy in the kitchen in a gray vest, and her figure was charming. These are rewards for her sister. We have to wait for her sister to come back to eat together. I looked at the dishes on the table and felt a little anxious. I called my wife, but the phone was not connected. My sister clearly said she would come back. Why can't I get through? My sister-in-law said puzzledly, with some doubts in her eyes. Maybe she is with Anthony, so... She turned off her phone. The food is cold. Let's eat first. I poured a glass of wine and took a sip. My sister-in-law looked at me and didn't say anything more. We started eating. She took a sip of wine, and her face was very charming. After eating, she asked me to put down the dishes and clean up by myself. My sister clearly said we should have dinner together. She muttered and went back to the room. I sat at the dining table, raised my glass, and drank it in one gulp. Every time after dinner, I'm used to taking a walk in the park, and today is no exception. In the park, I met my neighbor Lee Wong. He looked at me with a strange look in his eyes, as if he was very surprised. Lee Wong and I have been neighbors for many years and have always had a good relationship. But since my business failed, Lee Wong seemed to start to distance himself from me. Juan, I have something to tell you. Lee Wong handed me a cigarette and said with concern, There seems to be something wrong with my sister-in-law's lifestyle. My heart tightened. Did she cheat? Someone saw her go to the Super 8 hotel with a man. My heart skipped a beat. My head was buzzing, and I asked, Do you have any evidence? No. If not, don't talk nonsense. Lee Wong smiled awkwardly, patted my shoulder, and turned away. I stood there, my mind full of various thoughts. Why do you say that? I was filled with anger and confusion. All the gossip made me more and more uneasy, as if there was a shadow hanging over my head. I couldn't help but ask myself, should I let this happen? I couldn't calm down, so I called my wife and finally got through. What are you doing? She was panting, as if she was doing some intense exercise. Didn't you say you would come back in the evening? The company had a temporary task, so I stayed to work overtime. Her breathing became more and more rapid. What are you doing? The company's elevator is broken, and I'm climbing the stairs. Her explanation made me even more confused. I'll send you a video later. After hanging up the phone, I sent a video request through WeChat. But my wife didn't answer my video, which made me feel mixed. Is she with Anthony? I was so angry that I was shaking all over. My fingers couldn't help but call her again, but she still didn't answer. Anyway, I tried again, but her phone was no longer accessible. I held the phone tightly, feeling empty and indescribable pain. After 7 years of marriage, the legendary 7-year itch finally arrived. I began to wonder if it was because I couldn't satisfy her, or because my business failed that she went to find another man. What did I do wrong? I bought a house for her parents, a wedding house for her brother, and even paid for her sister's college education. As a result, she treated me like this, and I felt very upset. Finally, 5 minutes later, she took the initiative to call me via video. I picked up the phone and saw her standing in the stairwell, her hair a little messy, as if she had just gotten out of bed. My phone had no signal just now, she explained. Although she didn't answer my question directly, I felt that she was hiding something. Oh, when are you going home? I asked. Although I wanted to question her, I hesitated because I had no evidence. Without evidence, questioning would only make me suffer. I'll go back after I finish the documents. She wiped the sweat from her forehead and hung up the phone in a hurry. If the economy allowed, I would have had someone follow her and find evidence. But now, everything has changed. It was already 7:30 when I got home. As soon as I walked in, she followed me back. She almost fell, quickly took off her high heels, threw her bag aside, and ran straight into the bathroom. Juan, help me take off my clothes. she said hurriedly, obviously a little unnatural. There must be some marks on her body that she doesn't want me to see. I handed her the clothes and went back to my room to lie down. My mind was full of the task Ling Ling gave me. I had to rush to Jiangbei City tomorrow. My wife might also go tonight. Not long after, my wife came back to the room after taking a shower, sat next to me, put her arms around me from behind, and whispered, "Honey, I'm going to Jiangbei City on a business trip tomorrow, and it may take a few days." I responded to her coldly. "Oh." After she saw my reaction, she continued to try to explain. "Actually, I don't want to go, but I have no choice." I sneered in my heart. She obviously wanted to go on a honeymoon with Anthony, but she said it reluctantly. I was too lazy to respond and continued to play with my phone. Seeing that I ignored her, she became even more enthusiastic and said, "Don't be angry. I will bring you a gift when I go to Jiangbei City this time. I guarantee you will like it." I was full of doubts. "Oh, go to bed early," I replied and ignored her. All this had nothing to do with the mission Ling Ling asked me to go to Jiangbei City, so of course I wouldn't tell her. The next morning, my wife and sister-in-law went to work together. Before leaving, my wife told me about household matters, such as watering the flowers and plants on the balcony, and especially asked me to give more money to my mother-in-law, saying that she was very hardworking to take care of our daughter. I was already bankrupt and had no extra money at all. My mother-in-law and her brother had never helped me when I was in trouble. My wife even asked me to give her sister-in-law more money to buy a car, and we had a big fight. I paid for everything in her family, including the house and the wedding gift. My father-in-law is a good man, and secretly gave me 20,000 yuan when I was in the most difficult time. I haven't been to the store these days. I've handed it over to the new guy Ling Ling found. I heard she's a great beauty. I've already prepared the ticket for the 3:30 p.m. bus. Holding my phone, looking at the explicit photos on my wife's phone, I felt mixed emotions. The phone suddenly rang. It was my sister-in-law. She was at work. Why did she suddenly call me? She said, "Brother-in-law, I don't want to work here anymore." I was stunned for a moment and quickly asked, "This job is pretty good. Why do you suddenly not want to do it?" Her voice trembled a little. "Mr. Wang is a pervert. I can't stay here anymore." I was a little shocked and guessed that she might have been hurt by Anthony. I didn't want to delve into it any further, so I responded calmly. "If you can't adapt, change jobs and talk to your sister." She agreed softly on the other end of the phone and hung up. I was thinking about whether to tell my wife about this, but since it was their sister's business after all, I decided not to intervene. Then, I boarded the train to Jiangbei City with mixed feelings. The scenery outside the car window passed by quickly, and time seemed to pass by unnoticed. In a blink of an eye, I arrived in Jiangbei City. This is my third time here. I once worked hard in this city with my brothers, but as time passed, we gradually lost contact and didn't know how they were doing now. I felt a little sad. Ling Ling gave me the task of finding a woman named Rose, who was the key person to facilitate this order. I called the number Ling Ling gave me. "Hello, I'm Johnson, a friend of Ling Ling." I just introduced myself, but Rose responded directly. "I advise you to go back," she said coldly and hung up the phone. This caught me off guard, but I knew that there was almost no hope for this order unless there was a miracle. Despite this, I still decided to go to the company to talk to the person in charge. I had promised Ling Ling anyway, so I couldn't give up. With my luggage, I checked into a hotel near the Flash Group. My wife didn't need to go on a business trip, and Anthony shouldn't be here. The anger in my heart couldn't be calmed down. The phone rang suddenly. It was Rose calling. "Can you come out for a while? Let's have dinner together," she offered. "Sure. Where shall we meet?" I accepted her invitation. "City East Binbei Cafe." She gave the location. I hurriedly took a taxi and saw a familiar Mercedes-Benz on the way. The person in the driver's seat was Anthony, and the woman in the passenger seat looked very much like my wife. Anger and confusion mixed together. I picked up my phone and sent a video to my wife, and she answered the call and was indeed in the car. "Where are you?" she asked me, and I calmly replied, "I just arrived in Jiangbei and was looking for a hotel." She said she was traveling with her leader, but inside the car were Anthony and the woman I hated. Unable to suppress my anger, my wife hung up the video, and I continued to the cafe. She sent me a message saying, "Our leader is a woman." I couldn't help but sneer. It was Anthony I saw. She did this because she was guilty. Although I had evidence, I chose not to expose her. The responsibility of life made me choose to be patient and take revenge slowly. When we got to the coffee shop, Rose was sitting on the second floor with a sad look on her face. It was obvious that she had been troubled recently. When she saw me, she immediately regained her composure. "Mr. Huang, order whatever you want to drink." She didn't waste any words and went straight to the point. I can't help you with this order. This is a gift from Sister Ling Ling. Please take it back to her. I couldn't help but ask, Sister Sue, do you have any unspeakable secrets? She was silent for a moment and finally said, I can't make the decision on this order. The person in charge is Wang Mingliang. Rose said helplessly. Wang Mingliang and Anthony are childhood friends and classmates. I really have no idea about this order. I hope Sister Ling Ling can understand. I asked unwillingly. Is there still a chance to get this order? She shook her head. It's basically impossible. They will sign the contract in the next few days. I suggest you give up. I was unwilling and continued to ask. Is there no other way? She shook her head and smiled bitterly. After dinner, I walked alone on the street with a heavy heart. Opportunities may not be in the hands of others, but need to be fought for by oneself. I walked aimlessly to the beach and suddenly heard someone screaming. Turning around, I saw a woman shouting for help towards the sea, and a child was being pushed into the deep by the waves. I grew up by the river when I was a child, and I knew how to swim. I rushed into the sea without hesitation and saved the child to the shore. After saving the people, I handed them over to the women and children, feeling exhausted. As the sky gradually darkened, I began to investigate Wang Mingliang's situation. Wang Mingliang's wife, Huang Xiuzhu, was very vain. She had accepted money from the CEO of a company, but failed to complete the transaction. Instead, she leaked business secrets, causing the other company to be on the verge of bankruptcy. When I looked through Huang Xiuzhu's photos, I found that her face was very familiar to me. Recalling for a moment, I realized that this woman had appeared in my wife's mobile phone album, and she was standing very close to a man. I couldn't help but think, is Wang Mingliang also cheated like me? While I was thinking, Anthony walked into the hotel with his wife, Lu Yinfeng and Huang Xiuzhu. I saw Anthony secretly touching Huang Xiuzhu, which made me very angry. My wife stood next to Anthony and didn't seem to care about Anthony's behavior. I secretly took a photo, and I was extremely angry, but I resisted the urge to rush over immediately. They used their ID cards to book 2 rooms, and I got the room numbers by tipping the waiter. I followed them upstairs quietly and saw my wife and Lu Yinfeng enter room 722, while Anthony and Huang Xiuzhu entered room 723. I felt that this was an opportunity not to be missed. I went downstairs to buy a new SIM card and sent a message to Wang Mingliang, telling him that Huang Xiuzhu and Anthony were cuckolded in room 723 of the hotel. Wang Mingliang did not respond, so I called him and told him that he was betrayed. He responded coldly, "This is my business, don't worry about it." After hanging up the phone, I sent him a video, but still got no response. Suddenly, I saw Anthony and his group checking out. I wondered if Wang Mingliang had told Anthony. Otherwise, why would Anthony leave the hotel with Huang Xiuzhu and the other 2 women? I saw Lu Yinfeng checking out at the front desk, and my wife left with Huang Xiuzhu and Anthony. The 3 of them got into Anthony's Mercedes-Benz. Lu Yinfeng followed closely behind, carrying her bag. I watched them drive away, and I couldn't understand why Wang Mingliang was cheated on, but he didn't seem to react at all, and he might even have known about it. I hired a taxi and decided to follow them to see what they were doing. After passing a few traffic lights, the Mercedes-Benz stopped in front of a hotel. Wang Mingliang was waiting at the door of the hotel, talking to Anthony with a smile on his face. Huang Xiuzhu walked towards Wang Mingliang and took his hand, and the 5 of them walked into the hotel. I couldn't help but feel a little uneasy. It was obvious that they were getting together on purpose. I began to wonder how Wang Mingliang handled his wife's affairs and whether Anthony took advantage of this situation to get the order. I walked to the hotel and asked the front desk. They only booked 1 room. This made me even more uneasy. 2 men and 3 women sharing a room. What could they do? I decided to call the police and report the suspicious activities in the hotel. The police arrived quickly and took Anthony, Huang Xiuzhu, and Lu Yinfeng away, but my wife and Wang Mingliang were not taken away. I was very confused. Why were my wife and Wang Mingliang not taken away? I called my wife, but she didn't answer. Just as I was wondering, my wife came out of the hotel with an anxious look on her face, holding her phone, and then left the hotel. Then, Wang Mingliang also came out of the hotel in a panic, and the 2 left in a hurry. At this time, I received a call from my sister-in-law. She asked me if I would go home for dinner, and I answered vaguely that I would not go home because I had to accompany a client. She was obviously a little suspicious and asked if I had a woman when I didn't go home. I felt a little impatient, but I didn't respond to her question. After hanging up the phone, I decided to download the video footage I took to a USB drive and send it to Anthony's wife to expose his ugly behavior. As soon as I finished these things, my wife called me back. He didn't answer the phone just now when it was in his hand, but he just called me back now. It's really infuriating to think about it. Is there something you want to talk to me about? It's okay. I just missed you. I said something against my will that even I found disgusting. Oh, if you have something to say, please tell me quickly. I have something to do here. Her tone was hurried, and she was obviously a little anxious. It's nothing. Have you arrived at the hotel? Is your work going well? I asked with pretended concern. Well, I've checked into the hotel. Work is going well. If you have nothing else, I'll hang up first. I have to be busy. She hung up the phone in a hurry. Later, I sent her a WeChat video, but she didn't dare to answer and hung up directly. I received a voice message from her, explaining that she was with a colleague, and her colleague didn't have enough clothes to video chat. Anthony, Liu Yinfeng, and Huang Xiuzhu arrested, while my wife and Wang Mingliang were safe and sound. I recall that the front desk clerk had said that they had only booked one room, but it seemed that Wang Mingliang had probably already booked a room. Were my wife and Wang Mingliang doing some shady deal? My anger gradually grew, and I began to doubt my wife. Although we had been married for many years, I was still unwilling to believe that she had betrayed me, but I could not ignore the various signs. Just as I was thinking, my cell phone rang. It was Rose. I picked it up hastily. Mr. Huang, are you free? We need to meet. There was a hint of urgency in her voice. Yes, where are you? I'll pick you up. I agreed without hesitation. Rose's initiative to contact me might mean that there is still hope for this order. Then come to my house to pick me up. After she said that, I quickly called a taxi and went to her house. Along the way, my mind was still occupied by everything that had just happened. When I arrived downstairs of Rose's house, I called her and she told me that she was waiting for me across the street. After seeing her, I got into her red BMW, and there was a pleasant fragrance in the car. Is there any improvement? I couldn't help asking. Well, Anthony was arrested. She smiled and continued. Anthony was really asking for trouble. He actually had a group sex in the hotel. Her message was so fast. My heart suddenly sank. Rose's news spread so quickly. She already knew about Anthony's arrest. I had some doubts in my heart, but I tried to stay calm. She said calmly, his arrest will definitely have an impact. I will bring this up at the meeting and strive for this order. When you come to discuss cooperation, remember to bring the information and don't do anything out of line during the period. She seemed to be examining me. Her eyes were deep. Don't worry, I'm not that kind of person. I nodded, but I felt a little uneasy. Then I smiled and said, I wish us success. I'll treat you tonight. Rose did not refuse, and we went to the hotel to have a meal together. After eating and drinking, she suggested going shopping. I understood what she meant, so I accompanied her to the big shopping mall in the city. Rose bought tens of thousands of bags and some high-end clothes without hesitation. It was not a small amount of money, but fortunately, Ling Ling supported her financially. After shopping in the mall, we walked to the underground garage. Rose's actions were a bit intimate, and she seemed to touch my arm intentionally or unintentionally. Standing next to me, she looked calm, as if nothing had happened. Maybe I was overthinking, but the fragrance on her body was really hard for me to ignore. Back in the car, Rose leaned a little closer to me, and my heartbeat quickened, but she didn't seem to notice. I cleared my throat. Sister Sue, I'll take you home. She nodded and seemed to be more sober. After sending her to the community, I returned to the hotel alone. I always felt uneasy, feeling that this list was not as simple as it seemed. After sorting out the materials, I took a shower and was about to rest when my phone rang. It was my wife. She video called me in her pajamas, looking at me with a questioning look in her eyes. Where are you? I knew she had learned from Li Xinyue that I hadn't returned home. I simply replied, in the hotel. She seemed a little surprised, but didn't ask any more questions. But I noticed something on the phone screen. There were cigarette butts in the ashtray on the table. My heart suddenly sank, and I asked, who are you with? Her eyes instantly showed displeasure. Why? I'm with my colleagues. She quickly added, maybe the waiter didn't clean up. I looked at her face carefully and saw that she frowned slightly, obviously a little uncomfortable. You don't believe me? Her tone was full of grievance, and she was almost crying. I couldn't help but feel a little suspicious, but I still said patiently, I'm just curious why there is a cigarette butt in the ashtray. She quickly turned the camera to the room and looked around to confirm that there was no one. Do you believe me? She asked softly, her eyes red. Okay, I believe you. Go to bed early. I sneered in my heart, but responded lightly on the surface. After hanging up the video, his wife sent another message, seeming a little disappointed. I remember your boss's name seems to be Ling Ling, right? I was a little alert. Yes. She continued to ask. She has an important project in Jiangbei City. Did you know? This surprised me a little, and I quickly pretended not to know. I don't know what's wrong. My wife hung up the phone helplessly, obviously disappointed with my reaction. I thought to myself that she obviously had a purpose this time. I lay down and prepared to sleep, but my mind was full of doubts and anxiety. The next morning, Rose notified me to go to her company. When I arrived at the Shining Group, she had arranged everything and seemed confident that she would successfully win the order. However, when I walked into her office, Wang Mingliang's arrival broke the peace. He told Rose directly, I will take charge of this order. Rose's face changed immediately, her brows furrowed, and she was obviously unhappy. Wang Mingliang dropped the document and left the office. Rose looked at the document and her face darkened. This is ridiculous. I glanced at it and saw that the document was about her job transfer. Johnson, wait for me. I'll be back soon. She left the office angrily. 10 minutes later, Rose came back with red and swollen eyes. Obviously, she had been crying. Her voice was hoarse. I'm sorry, I couldn't complete this transaction. She continued, I'll return the money for those bags to you. Let's go. I didn't leave in a hurry, but asked, who will get this order in the end? She shook her head helplessly and said, Anthony S. Style discussed the company's senior management. The order will not be given to him, nor to Mariah Company. This answer made me feel a little relieved. At least this mission did not fall into Anthony's hands. She said gratefully, thank you, Johnson. But she was obviously disappointed. When I was leaving the company, my wife called me again. Where are you? Her voice was anxious. I answered, I'm going home. But I couldn't hide my anger, and the smell of Wang Mingliang's perfume was still lingering in my mind. Go home early. I have something to tell you. Are you at home? Your wife comes home early in the morning? Well, after video chatting with you last night, I took a taxi home. I have a hidden camera installed in my bedroom. I can tell whether she came home last night by just looking at the surveillance video. Oh, I have something else to do here, so I won't be back until later. Oh, okay, husband. Do you know anyone in the police station? I have a friend who was arrested. Can you help smooth things over? I thought she had something to tell me, but it turns out she was telling me this. I refused decisively. It was me who reported Anthony, and his wife actually asked me to bail him out? It would be weird if she really had nothing to do with Anthony. This bitch. I couldn't help but curse in my heart. I could hear my wife sneeze on the other end of the line. Now that she has said so, I will also act with her. What friend of yours? What did he do wrong? I asked deliberately, because if I didn't ask, it would arouse her suspicion. I can't tell you what my friend did wrong. If you can't help, don't ask so many questions. I could tell from her words that she was dissatisfied with me. It felt like she was mocking me for not being able to save Anthony. This time I was really disappointed. Back at the hotel, I took out my phone and used the cloud service to check the surveillance footage. I tuned in and started watching it at around 9 o'clock last night. She did go home last night and stayed in her room talking on the phone until the early hours of the morning before she went to bed. So far, there has been no abnormality in the monitoring. It's a bit regrettable that the surveillance camera I installed does not have a recording function. Suddenly, a figure walked into the house from outside. I stared at the door with my eyes wide open. Standing at the door was my sister-in-law in pink pajamas. This scene was really shocking. She was lying where I usually slept, chatting happily with my wife. I saw the sad look on my wife's face. She seemed to be worried and didn't say a word. My sister-in-law kept talking, and suddenly, tears flashed in my wife's eyes and she cried. My sister-in-law seemed stunned and hurried to comfort her. In this way, my sister-in-law accompanied my wife to sleep for a whole night. I watched the video silently, feeling heavy-hearted and a little uneasy. Half an hour passed, and still nothing unusual was found. I reported the situation of the Flash Company to Ling Ling and mentioned Anthony's incident. This negative incident led to the other party's decision not to sign the contract with Malaya. Ling Ling was obviously not happy after hearing this, because she knew that this would cause the company to suffer losses. But there is some good news. Anthony was arrested for gathering a crowd, and the personnel adjustment of Mariah Company is in Ling Ling's favor. Ling Ling asked me to try my best to get this order, but if I can't do it, I don't have to force it. I understand that Wang Mingliang is currently the project leader, and it is almost impossible to get the order from him. I can't count on him, so I can only go to his boss and maybe use this opportunity to put pressure on him. After thinking about it, I decided to go to Rose in person and ask for her help. Her current situation made me not dare to overestimate her help, but it was the only way. In order to fight for this project, I decided to go to her as soon as possible. In the afternoon, my sister-in-law called me and asked, "Will you come back for dinner tonight?" I answered briefly, "No, I have something to do outside and may not be back tonight." She seemed a little worried. "Don't stay out all night, it's not good." I felt helpless and felt that she always suspected me, but didn't ask about her sister. I had a quick lunch, bought some gifts, and headed to Rose's house. When I knocked on her door, I was stunned to see her in her pink pajamas. There was red wine and snacks on the table behind her, and the aroma of wine was fragrant. When she saw me, she blushed and said, "Wait a moment." She closed the door, and I stood outside and waited for a few minutes before she changed her clothes and opened the door. "Why are you here again?" she asked with a smile. I whispered, "I need your help with something." She glanced at me and nodded. "Come in." Entering her apartment, I found that the decoration style here is very special. The ice and snow-themed design makes people feel both calm and romantic. She took me to the sofa, took a high-foot glass, and poured some red wine. "I'm in a bad mood today. Have a drink with me." Her eyes flashed with gentle light, and I raised my glass and gently clinked it with hers. I was going to leave, but Rose insisted that I drink with her. In the end, I couldn't refuse and had to drink with her. I don't know how much we drank, but we were both drunk. I felt so dizzy that I didn't know how I ended up lying on the sofa in Rose's house, and then I lost consciousness. The next morning, I woke up with a severe headache and a dry throat. I just wanted to drink some water. I opened my eyes suddenly and was shocked to see Rose lying next to me. However, both of our clothes were intact. Although we were unconscious last night, nothing that shouldn't have happened. In addition to the strong smell of alcohol, I was also stained with her perfume. I got up gently, put Rose on the sofa, covered her with a sheet, and then went to boil water. About half an hour later, Rose woke up and said she was thirsty in a daze. I quickly poured her a glass of water and handed it to her. After she took the water, her eyes widened and she looked at me in a daze, as if checking if there was anything wrong with her. After confirming that everything was fine, she breathed a sigh of relief and whispered, "I'm sorry, I lost my temper last night." I quickly apologized. "I am also responsible for this." She looked at me apologetically. "Today is the weekend. I will take you to meet my friend later." There was a hint of uncertainty in her tone, which made me feel guilty unconsciously, even though I did nothing last night. She went to wash up, and I sat in the living room and took out my phone to check. There were 10 missed calls. 5 of them were from my wife, 3 were from my sister-in-law, 1 was from my mother-in-law, and 1 was from an unfamiliar number. The call came around 10:30 when I was drunk. I opened WeChat and my wife sent a video call request, but it was only called once. I was about to reply to the message when Rose came out of the bathroom. She had changed her clothes and was ready to go out. Before leaving, she made a simple breakfast in the kitchen: sausages, eggs, and sandwiches. Looking at this breakfast, I felt a little uncomfortable. After breakfast, I followed her out of her house. In the car, Rose told me that her friend was called Ruji and that the leader was a relative of Ruji. I thought to myself that Rose's position was probably promoted through Ruji's relationship, and of course her own ability should not be ignored. Just then, my cell phone rang and my wife called. "Where did you go last night? Why didn't you answer the phone?" Her tone was somewhat blaming. "I was drinking with a client and got drunk." I explained casually. She didn't continue to ask and went straight to the point. "I have something to discuss with you." "What is it?" "I want to sell our house." This proposal surprised me, and I didn't expect her to make such a request. "Why sell it?" "My brother has leukemia and needs money for treatment." Hearing this, I almost exploded. "Let your brother sell the house." His brother's house is written in his wife's name, and his wife doesn't agree to sell it, so he can only sell ours. His wife doesn't care about him. Why should I care? I said angrily. "This matter is not negotiable. I only have such a brother." Her voice was full of grievances. I was completely fed up. "Enough, stop talking. I can't sell the house to pay for his medical treatment." I heard her angry voice on the other end of the phone, and I hung up. After a while, my mother-in-law called me and begged me to help her son with his medical treatment in a crying voice. "I don't want to send my son away." Her tone made me feel sick. I was angry, but I still told her about my difficulties, mentioning that my business failed and my financial difficulties. I wanted to give her some money to help, but thinking of my wife's series of behaviors, I decided not to give a penny. My mother-in-law was relentless and asked me to sell the house. I couldn't bear it anymore and responded coldly. "Didn't I buy the house in your family? Even your son's car was bought by me. Now you don't want to sell the house, But you want me to sell it? My mother-in-law was speechless. I was so angry, but I could bear it. At least I didn't want Rose to hear about this family scandal. After hanging up the phone, I was full of anger and in a terrible mood. Then my sister-in-law called again. Brother-in-law, where are you? Outside. I answered perfunctorily. She mentioned my brother's illness and advised me not to sell the house. She is my brother, yes, but if her brother's house is not for sale, why should she sell yours? I was a little surprised that she said that. I can't stand my brother's sister-in-law's behavior either. Her attitude touched me a little. My sister-in-law is indeed a rational woman. Chapter 20. The thief's heart is still there. Don't stay outside all the time. Go home early. I was sitting in the passenger seat, getting angrier and angrier. She actually asked me to sell the house to pay for her brother's medical treatment. What do you take me for? Something happened at home? Rose, who was driving, asked me casually. It's no big deal. If that's the case, then even if her brother died, it would be what he deserved. You used my money to buy you this and that before, but now that I'm down and out, not only do you not help me, you're trying to push me into the fire. Except for my sister-in-law and father-in-law, no one in their family knows how to be grateful. Seeing that I didn't want to talk about it, Rose didn't ask any more questions. After about half an hour's drive, we arrived at Ruji's house. Her house is a villa, which is very large and spacious. As soon as the car stopped, a little boy in white clothes ran out and called Aunt Rose with a smile on his face. Be good, Chun-Chun. Rose picked up the child. This child named Chun-Chun should be Ruji's son. Ruji walked out behind Chun-Chun. She was tall, about 1.7 meters tall, with a mixed-race face. Judging from her skin appearance, she should be Chinese Dutch. Even though she is a mother, she is still very elegant. This kind of temperament is innate and makes people feel comfortable when looking at it. This is Johnson, my friend. Rose introduced me to Ruji. I reached out my hand to shake hands with Ruji and introduce myself, and at the same time put some things I bought from the supermarket on the table in her house. She smiled at me and introduced herself as well. What puzzled me was that the three of us were sitting in the living room, and Rose and Ruji were chattering nonstop, leaving me aside. I'm too embarrassed to interrupt. Finally, Rose talked to Ruji about me. Ruji looked at me and said to Rose that she could help me. I hurriedly thanked Ruji. Finally, it was decided to introduce me to that leader in the evening. It was almost noon, time for lunch. I offered to treat them to a meal, and Ruji and Rose did not refuse. After dinner, I, 2 girls and a child went shopping. We played like this for the whole day. Shopping with a woman is really tiring, especially with a woman who is bringing a child. We walked around until around 5 o'clock and finished our dinner. Then I returned to the hotel. I have booked a banquet for around 8 p.m. Ruji would bring Wang Ming's direct superior Wang Chong to have dinner with me. When I was chatting with Ruji at noon, she told me that Wang Chong likes antiques. Just now, I went to the antique market with Rose and bought a painting, which cost about 50,000 yuan. I have reported the expenses for buying this antique to Ling Ling. Ling Ling also agreed. She told me that it would be worth spending hundreds of thousands of dollars as long as I could make this deal happen. Everything was ready. I lay down on the bed and took a rest. Around 8 o'clock, I prepared some documents for the project. Prepared to talk to Wang Chong. Before I left the house, Ling Ling called and said Anthony had been released on bail and was now in Jiangbei, so I should be careful. It only took 1 day for Anthony to be released on bail. This Wang Mingliang should not be underestimated. Just after answering Ling Ling's call, my sister-in-law called right after. When are you coming back? I'm on a business trip and can't come back today. Where is my sister? Won't she come back at night? My sister-in-law asked me curiously. Is your sister not home? She went out in the afternoon. Wasn't she with you? My sister-in-law asked me back. Anthony was released on bail, and his wife left home. Could it be that she came to find Anthony? Was she ready to be with Anthony? I felt a vast expanse of green in front of me, and I felt even worse. No. Will you visit your brother in the hospital? I just came back from the hospital, and she didn't go. After leaving the hospital in the afternoon, I haven't seen her since. I sent her messages, but she didn't reply. I hope nothing happened to her. What could possibly happen to a man that big? I guess she must be in Jiangbei City now and is with Anthony. How could this woman be so hateful? You should look for her. She was arguing with you today about selling the house. Is she going to get upset? Not really. I laughed at myself in my heart. How could a woman with such thick skin be so desperate? Why do I feel like you don't care about my sister at all? My sister-in-law angrily retorted to me, and then said after a moment, Do you really have someone else outside? Don't you care about my sister at all? Women's brains are just like that. They like to fantasize. You think too much. I really want to tell my sister-in-law all the suspicious things I have discovered recently so that she can see your sister's face. The words came to my throat, but I swallowed them back. I shouldn't have told her this. Besides, I still have no evidence. It's just my intuition. Then why don't you care about my sister at all? I warn you, if you dare to bully my sister, I will be rude to you. My sister-in-law said to me angrily. The innocent are innocent. No matter how hard you try, it won't make it clean. And I'm telling you, the bag you found under the bed in the room belonged to your mother. My mother? At this time, the sister-in-law must have been blushing with dissatisfaction. She probably knew a little bit about the fact that her mother cheated on her father. Okay, I don't want to talk to you anymore. I still have things to do, so let's leave it at that for now. I ignored her and packed my things and left the hotel. Come to the famous restaurant in Jiangbei City, where a meal can cost hundreds or even tens of thousands of yuan. The lights outside the restaurant were bright, and several beautiful waiters were standing at the door to welcome guests. These female receptionists are also carefully selected, with long white legs and a very good image. No one of the dishes inside are expensive. Many people of some status like to come to this restaurant to drink. The reason I booked a seat here was Ru Ji's suggestion. I entered the box early and waited for the arrival of the distinguished guest. As soon as I sat down, I called Ru Ji, and she told me that they were on their way. I smoked a cigarette, walked out of the box, looked towards the lobby, and saw a familiar figure. Isn't that the wife? Why is she here too? Because there were too many people, and I was at the entrance of the box. I looked up and saw that familiar figure was lost in the crowd. I walked forward, trying to find her among the crowd, but couldn't find her at all. I went back to the box and sat down. The more I thought about it, the angrier I got. So I sent a video to my wife, but she rejected it. Then she responded to me with a text message, saying that she was very busy and would get back to me later. Time passed minute by minute. After waiting for about 10 minutes, Ruji called me and said that there was a traffic jam and they would be there in 5 minutes. Chapter 0:21. Infatuated. I asked the waiter to serve the food, but my mind was not on the food, but on my wife whom I had just met outside. I really want to see which box she is in and what she is doing. I can't help but think about that, and sometimes I really want to slap myself. After a while, Wang Chong and Ru Ji came over. There were only Wang Chong and Ru Ji, no one else. Looking at Wang Chong carefully, I felt that he was so familiar, as if I had seen him somewhere. After thinking about it, it suddenly dawned on me. Wang Chong's face shape is so similar to Ru Ji Sun Qinchen's face shape, as if they were carved from the same mold. Qinchen is the child of Ruji and Wang Chong. Then Ruji's husband must be. Hello, Mr. Wang. I greeted Wang Chong with a smile and shook hands with him. He also smiled and shook my hand. I didn't jump right into the topic. I had dinner with Wang Chong and Ru Ji first. While eating, I didn't forget to praise Ru Ji's beauty. Wang Chong's face was full of smiles when he heard this. He was very happy when I praised Ru Ji, which showed that he and Ru Ji had a very close relationship. As for other people's private lives, I don't want to interfere. After 3 rounds of drinks, I deliberately took out the paintings I bought from the antique market to appreciate them with Wang Chong. Wang Chong's eyes lit up when he saw the ancient painting. He took out a magnifying glass from his pocket and enlarged it to observe it. He held the ancient painting in his hand and said excitedly, "This is Master Lu's authentic work. It is very rare in the market and worth collecting." Then he asked me, "Mr. Huang, where did you get this painting? Can you sell it to me?" Wang Chong likes this painting very much. "Mr. Wang, I can, but I have a favor to ask. As long as you agree to help me, this painting will be yours." Let me get straight to the point. Wang Chong was reluctant to put down Master Lu's ancient painting. He put away the magnifying glass in his hand and looked at me. "Mr. Huang, please tell me anything." "Mr. Wang, I'm a salesperson from the Mariah Group. I hope you can give me the Shijiang order to sign." The fat and big-eared Wang Chong frowned first and then asked, "Is Ming Liang handling all this?" I went to Mr. Wang, but he didn't give me any chance. "I can only come to you. I hope you can give me a chance. I promise that I can do this order better than any other company." I promise solemnly. Wang Chong hesitated, and at the moment of hesitation, his eyes were more focused on Master Lu's painting on my desk. I knew he was considering whether to help me. I remained silent, just waiting for his response. As long as he agreed, this matter would be easy. "Come on, Mr. Wang, I'll toast you a glass. This is just a matter of words for you. Please give me this opportunity, Mr. Wang. I think Mr. Huang is quite sensible and a good person. This is not a big deal for you, just help him." At the critical moment, Ruji said something. This has a lot to do with the bag I gave her when I went shopping with her at noon. Okay, I'll talk to Ming Liang when we get back later. Wang Chong agreed, and the weight of my heart finally fell off. The order was settled. In order to prevent any unexpected changes, I have drafted the cooperation contract. The order was completed once Wang Mingliang signed and stamped it with the company seal. Mr. Wang, this is the contract I drafted. Please take a look. I handed the contract to Wang Chong with both hands. He glanced at me and said, Wait a moment, Mr. Wang. I'll ask Mingliang to come over and take over with you. Excuse me, Mr. Wang. I found that Wang Chong's eyes were more focused on the painting. He took out his cell phone and called Wang Mingliang, asking him to bring the company's legal department and the company's seal, saying that a contract needed to be signed temporarily. After the call, Wang Chong began to observe the painting in fascination. I thought he was about to go crazy. During the meal, we had 2 glasses of wine and talked about some topics related to antiques. I found that Wang Chong really likes antiques. Half an hour later, Wang Mingliang came over with a company legal officer. When Wang Mingliang saw me, he was stunned for a moment and his expression changed again and again. The Shijiang order will be given to Mr. Huang, Wang Chong said to Wang Mingliang indifferently. Wang Mingliang wanted to refute, but he didn't dare to say anything. There is no good result if you offend your boss. Mr. Wang, that order is being negotiated with another company and is ready to be signed. Wang Mingliang said hurriedly. That means it hasn't been signed yet. The contract is over there. Let the legal department take a look, and if there's no problem, we'll sign it. For the sake of this authentic work of Master Lu, Wang Chong didn't care about Wang Mingliang's feelings. Thinking about what I said during the day about sending all kinds of garbage, I felt really slapped in the face now. No matter how reluctant Wang Mingliang was since Wang Chong had agreed, he didn't dare to say anything and could only do what his boss said. Chapter 022 Successfully Taken. The legal officer took my contract and read it carefully. He was quite efficient and finished reading the contract I had prepared in just 15 minutes. Boss Wang, there is no problem with Manager Wang's contract. Mr. Huang, it's a pleasure to work with you. Wang Chong stretched out his hand to shake hands with me. It's a pleasure to work with you. Wang Mingliang next to him signed the contract reluctantly. There are 2 contracts in total, one for each company. I carefully put away the contract and toasted Wang Chong with a glass of wine. Wang Chong smiled and drank the wine. Wang Mingliang was also a smart man. Seeing this, he immediately poured a glass of wine and said, Mr. Huang, I'll toast you on behalf of Mr. Wang. Since the deal has been done, if I don't drink with him, I would be disrespecting Wang Chong. Of course you have to drink this wine. After drinking, Wang Mingliang said he had something else to do and had to leave first. Wang Chong didn't stop him either. Wang Chong and I drank for more than an hour, during which time our topic was still about antiques. Wang Chong has no immunity to his favorite antiques. He once paid 1,000,000 yuan to buy his favorite antique at an auction. In the blink of an eye, it was already past 11 o'clock. I was thinking about taking Wang Chong to get a massage to relax after dinner, but it was inconvenient for him to bring Ruji with him. After watching Wang Chong and Ruji leave, I took another look at the contract in my bag and breathed a sigh of relief. I finally got the order. To be honest, this time it was quite unexpected that Wang Chong was bribed by just a painting. What makes me feel sad is where is my wife now, and what is she doing? Although it is almost dawn, the restaurant is doing very well and the lobby is packed with people. I walked around the lobby to see if I could find any trace of my wife. I was quite disappointed because I didn't find her in the crowd. It's too late now. I can only go back to the hotel and make plans. It was already early morning when I returned to the hotel. I called Ling Ling and reported the situation to her. I knew you could do it. Ling Ling said happily. Now that the contract has been signed, come back soon. I'm still waiting to welcome you back. Sister Ling, I may be back a little later. I will have someone send the contract back first. You just need to arrange for someone to contact the Flash Company. Do you have anything else to do in Jiangbei? I didn't come out with great difficulty. I want to take a walk and get some fresh air. The main reason I don't want to go back is entirely because of my wife. I mainly want to get to the bottom of things. Okay then, when you come back, remember to tell me and I'll host a celebration party for you. After chatting with Ling Ling for a long time, I learned from her that Anthony was in trouble this time because the gathering of people for XX had a bad impact on the company. He failed to get the Shijiang order again, and the company decided to transfer him. It was not clear where he would be transferred to, but it would not be a good thing. It was almost 1 in the morning. After thinking it over, I sent a video call to my wife. She didn't respond to me. I opened my phone and checked the cloud service for my home surveillance, and the room was empty, with no one in it. Even though I knew she had cheated on me, I still wanted to witness it with my own eyes. Perhaps this is the dark side of my heart. What makes me uncomfortable is that I know she is having an affair with another man, but I don't have any evidence. The more I thought about it, the more unwilling I felt. For the next 15 minutes, I kept sending her videos. Finally, she hung up my video call and sent me a voice message. "Are you crazy? What are you doing in the middle of the night?" Her voice sounded like she was asleep and was woken up by me. "Where are you?" I questioned her. "I'm temporarily assigned by the company to Jiangbei again. I'm at the Bronze Hotel now. I'm going to go home tomorrow." "Who are you with?" "My colleague. Everyone is asleep. Why are you calling me in the middle of the night just to ask me this?" "I want a video chat with you. My colleagues are all asleep, so it's not convenient. Let's talk about it when I get home tomorrow. As for my brother's matter, we can discuss it in detail when I get back." The wife also mentioned her brother. She insisted that I pay money to help her brother without even considering my state of mind after my business failed. Maybe it's because they were used to taking money from me when I had money before. "As for your brother's matter, unless he sells his house first, and there is really no other way for us to help him, don't even think about it." I told my wife this very clearly. "Johnson, I only have one brother. Can you bear to watch him die?" My wife retorted, "Okay, I won't talk to you about this now. Go to bed early." As she said this, she hung up the phone in a hurry. At the moment she hung up the phone, I could vaguely hear a man's voice beside me. "It seems to be saying, baby, who is calling you so late?" The sound was not clear. Was it my imagination? Or was there a man sleeping next to her? Chapter 023 Returned to Hometown. Lying on the bed, I didn't know why, but I felt a sense of suffocation in my heart. I wish I could be next to my wife right now to see what she is doing and whether there's a man with her. I tossed and turned that night. She said she was at the Bronze Hotel. I decided to go to the Bronze Hotel the next morning to check what was going on. I don't know how, but I fell asleep before I knew it. When I woke up, it was already 11:30 in the morning. I didn't expect to oversleep. I was thinking of going to the entrance of the Bronze Hotel early to investigate. When I woke up, I received a WeChat message from my wife telling me that she had returned to Jiangdong. She didn't tell me the specific reason why she went back to Jiangdong so early. Since she has gone back, there is no need for me to stay in Jiangbei. I called Ling Ling to ask when Anthony would be returning, and she told me that he should be able to return to Mariah today. "Why are you asking Anthony?" Ling Ling asked me very curiously. "No, I was just asking because I was afraid he would come back to attack me." I answered Ling Ling casually. I couldn't tell her that I suspected Anthony was having an affair with my wife. "Don't worry, now that the contract has been signed, the order is ours, and this matter is a done deal." Ling Ling did not forget to comfort me, and then said, "I transferred 50,000 yuan to your salary card as a reward for your help this time." I accepted it without being pretentious. "Thank you, Sister Ling. I should be the one thanking you. You did a great job this time." After some pleasantries, I packed up and prepared to return to Jiangdong. After all, my wife didn't stay in Jiangbei, so there wasn't much point in me staying there. I had just packed my things when Rose called me and asked if I was free to have lunch together. Indeed, I should treat Rose and Ruji to a meal. Now that the job has been done, we cannot forget their contributions. Okay, Ruji is not free at noon today, so Rose is having lunch with me alone. Today, Rose is wearing a silver-white halter dress. She looks very elegant. I feel that she is quite beautiful. I didn't feel it when I first came, but today I feel that she is particularly beautiful. Before she came close to me, I could smell the special perfume on her, and looking at her, I could smell the scent of hormones. "Are you really planning to leave Jiangbei? Why don't you stay for a day or two and let me show my hospitality?" Rose asked me to stay in Jiangbei. It made me feel that she had a good impression of me and gave me the feeling that I could get her if I wanted. This is really amazing. Maybe it's the magic of opposites attracting. Well, it's done, and I should go back. I'll come to see you next time I have the chance to come to Jiangbei. All right. I could see a little disappointment in Rose's eyes, but she quickly adjusted herself and said to me with a smile, "Okay, Jiangbei welcomes you anytime." Actually, I don't know either. After leaving Jiangbei this time, I don't know when I will be able to come back. After lunch, I planned to buy a ticket and leave, but Rose said she would take me to visit the historical sites and tourist attractions in Jiangbei. As she kept pestering me, I couldn't refuse, so I agreed to go with Rose to visit some famous scenic spots in Jiangbei. Along the way, she asked some questions about her family. I didn't tell her everything, and with the situation my wife has been in recently, I don't know what I would do if it was proven that she had betrayed me. With this emotion in mind, I told Rose that my relationship with my wife was not good and that divorce was a possibility at any time. This is indeed the current situation. Rose is really a natural tour guide. She told me all the stories that happened in the scenic spots and historical sites here, which made me feel that the trip was worthwhile. Time flies, and the sun sets. The golden glow of the sunset fell on us, leaving two dark shadows on the ground, and a line of egrets flew through the sky. The picture is very beautiful. No matter how beautiful the sunset is, it cannot withstand the invasion of night. I should go back now. Yes. Contact me more often when you have time. Rose added me on WeChat and said to me with a smile. She reluctantly sent me to the railway station and even parked her car in the parking lot to wait for the train with me in the waiting hall. She left just as the car was approaching. After leaving for a moment, she turned around and smiled at me. It makes me feel very excited. This smile is so stunning that it can captivate the whole country. I don't know when I can see her again. Maybe this is just a wonderful encounter. Accompanied by the sound of the train, I embarked on the journey home. Sitting on the high-speed train, watching the scenes passing by outside the window, I felt mixed emotions. You haven't come back yet? Looking at the message my wife sent me on my phone, I'm too lazy to reply to her. I turned on my phone and carefully watched the surveillance video in the room. My wife was indeed at home and was taking a nap at noon. I came to my senses after checking the surveillance time. My wife doesn't take a nap. She goes to bed around 10 o'clock in the morning. Generally speaking, the nap is from 12:30 to 2 o'clock in the afternoon. My wife slept until about 4 o'clock. She didn't sleep much last night. Otherwise, she wouldn't have slept that long during the day. What did she do last night? Scroll forward to the scene where my wife enters the room for the first time. After entering the room, she immediately took out her pajamas and towel from the closet, walked out of the room, and went to the bathroom to take a shower. She went home early in the morning and took a shower. Then she lay down to sleep. At noon, my sister-in-law came into the room, probably to ask my wife to get up and eat. But she did not get up to eat lunch but continued to sleep. What on earth did she do last night? Chapter 024, The Dark Side. I remember I sent her a video call last night, but she refused to do so, saying that her colleagues were all asleep and it was inconvenient for her to answer the call. I was watching the surveillance playback when she called me. Are you coming back? Well, we'll be home soon. Oh, remember to buy some fruit later, my wife ordered, and then asked me, where have you been these past 2 days? Why haven't you been home? I'm in an important client and negotiated a deal. What orders? Did you make a lot? Not a lot. I'll tell you more when I get back. I'll pick you up when you arrive. My wife is coming to pick me up for the first time. She was very mean to me before, but now she's being nicer to me. This makes me feel very strange. What kind of medicine is she selling? I had a bad feeling in my heart. It should be because she wanted to sell the house to pay for her brother's medical treatment. No need. I could just take a taxi back later. All right. Her voice sounded lost. The high-speed train slowly entered the Jiangdong City Railway Station. Returning to this familiar place again, I greedily breathed in a few breaths of fresh air. I took a taxi and went straight home. I was really tired after spending the past 2 or 3 days in Jiangbei City. Now I just want to have a good rest for 2 days. When I went home, I also went to the vegetable market to buy some fruits. I haven't seen my precious daughter for a long time, and I don't know if she misses me now. Maybe we are in tune with each other because I just thought of her and she called me. Dad, when will you come to see me? The daughter was almost crying. Be good, baby. Dad will come to see you when he gets home. Humph, you and Mom didn't come to see me this weekend. I'm going to ignore you. I've failed as a father. Baby, Daddy is working outside. I hope you can understand him. When you have a day off, Daddy will take you to the playground. Really? My daughter shouted happily. Please don't lie to me. Okay, pinky promise. I chatted with my lovely daughter for a few words and then hung up the phone. I really want to go over and hug my daughter and pinch her little face. Thinking about my wife's recent abnormal behavior, I want to take revenge on her, which will definitely hurt my lovely daughter. I felt inexplicably uncomfortable in my heart. This was something I didn't want to see, but I couldn't possibly allow someone to cheat on me. Come back home and open the door. A faint fragrance greeted my nose. The house was very clean. My sister-in-law was sitting on the sofa in her pajamas, watching TV. He was eating an apple in his hand. There was no sign of his wife in the house. Where's your sister? I put my luggage back in the room, walked out of the living room, and asked my sister-in-law who was sitting on the sofa eating an apple. I'm going to the hospital to see my brother. Brother-in-law, do you want to go over and see my brother too? My sister-in-law suddenly asked me. I haven't fallen out with my wife yet. so I still have to do the superficial work. Otherwise, she would become alert, and I wouldn't even have the chance to retaliate against her. Well, let's go and see her. I sighed and then asked, Your brother is so healthy on weekdays. How come he suddenly got sick? I don't know either. Maybe he moved in not long after the house was renovated, so... Oh, come with me to visit your brother. Okay, I'll go change my clothes. The sister-in-law in pajamas stood up and walked into the room. She really had a good figure. I don't know if it was an illusion, but I actually felt that her figure was better than my wife's. However, a dark side emerged in my mind. I shook my head, smiled helplessly, and quickly threw the dirty thoughts out of my mind. After a while, my sister-in-law came out of the room. She looked unique in her jeans, tall and elegant. Let's go. I'm going to buy some things first. My wife's younger brother works at the first hospital in the city center. My wife has taken the family car, so my sister-in-law and I have to take a taxi, which is very inconvenient. Chapter 025 Unreasonable. My sister-in-law and I rode in a taxi for half an hour and finally arrived at the first hospital in the city center. My sister-in-law took me to her brother's ward with ease. When I turned the corner to the elevator, I ran into Anthony, the person I didn't want to see. How could he be here? His eyes are staring at my sister-in-law next to me. The sister-in-law also looked at Anthony with disgust in her eyes. Anthony must have wanted to do something bad to his sister-in-law, so she resigned from her job. It was really embarrassing to meet Anthony here. Xiaoyu, Anthony, the old fox, greeted Li Xinyue with a smile. Li Xinyue pretended not to know him and took my hand. Brother-in-law, let's go. Judging from the sister-in-law's attitude, she hated Anthony so much. These are not the key points. The key point is why Anthony is here. Are you here to see your wife's brother? Or are you here to look for your wife? Are you Jessica's husband, Johnson? Anthony suddenly said, and he gently pushed his glasses with his right hand to introduce himself. My name is Anthony, and I'm Jessica's boss. Our eyes collided instantly, as if there was an aura, and both of us wanted to suppress the other. My momentum became stronger. Anthony took a step back and frowned slightly. I heard from Jessica that your business failed and you are now looking at a plumbing store. Do you want me to introduce you to a job? The salary is good, but it's in Jiangbei City. Thank you, no thanks. I refused directly. Would Anthony be so kind as to help me find a job? Jessica better? Let me bear the green grassland. 30,000 yuan a month, and the work is easy. Seeing that I was unmoved, Anthony spoke again, and then added, You only make 10,000 yuan a month in that small plumbing shop. In Jiangbei, you can earn 30,000 yuan, and it's easier than the small plumbing shop. You can consider it. He said this and turned away confidently. Brother-in-law, ignore him. He is not a good person. My sister-in-law pouted at me. Why don't you want to go to work? Did he make any special request to you? I asked my sister-in-law curiously. Don't say that. He's just a rotten person. The sister-in-law seemed to hate Anthony, as if Anthony had done something terrible to her. We walked down the corridor and soon arrived at my wife's brother's ward. In the ward, besides my mother-in-law, there was also my father-in-law. There was no sign of my wife. Where did she go if she was not in the hospital? As soon as we walked into the hospital, my mother-in-law didn't look at me in a good mood. She glanced at me and said nothing with a gloomy face. For a moment, the whole ward fell silent, and the atmosphere became slightly awkward. I put the fruit on the table and looked at my wife's brother for a while. After waiting for about 2 minutes, my mother-in-law finally spoke. Johnson, I have something to discuss with you. Why didn't my wife's sister-in-law come? She should be at home taking care of her children and my precious daughter. Mom, tell me what's going on. Although I hate my mother-in-law in my heart, I still treat her politely. After all, she is my elder. Let's talk outside. My mother-in-law was the first to walk out of the ward and stand in the corridor. Mom, tell me what's going on. Li Ji has this disease. It costs thousands of yuan a day to be hospitalized. We can't bear it any longer. Can you help? Mom, this is my salary for this month. I gave this month's salary of more than 10,000 yuan to my mother-in-law. This little bit is not enough. Let's discuss selling your house. My mother-in-law suddenly said, I certainly cannot agree with this. Why don't you sell your son's house? You want me to sell my house to save him. What do you think of me? I suppressed my anger and said, You also know my current situation. This is all I can do to help him. I stuffed the envelope containing my month's salary into my mother-in-law's hand and ignored her. Turn around and leave. I have done my best for their family, but they still want to take advantage of me. This is really too much. Johnson, it's because my daughter married a loser like you that my son has no money to treat his illness. I was so blind to marry my daughter to you. My mother-in-law is really too much to say such things. If it weren't for the fact that she helps me take care of my precious daughter, I wouldn't give him a penny. It's simply unreasonable. When my business had not failed, I used everything I had and even bought a house and a car for Li Ji, a house for the two elderly people, and sponsored her daughter to go to college. Now that I am down and out, you still say these words to me. It's really chilling. What makes me even more annoyed is that my wife is suspected of cheating on me. Can you blame others for your son's lack of money for medical treatment? It's you who didn't sell your house to pay for his medical treatment. Who can you blame? Survival of the fittest. This is the eternal truth. If I were the one lying on the hospital bed today, I'm afraid no one would care. Chapter 026. Consider it. I was very annoyed when she said that to me. I even wanted to turn around and take away the salary I gave her for the month, not giving her a dime. If she hadn't brought my daughter with her, I would have probably fallen out with her long ago. I turned around and left without even looking back. Mom, you're going too far. I vaguely heard my sister-in-law scolding her mother, and then she chased after me from behind. You also know what kind of person my mother is. Don't be angry. I find it strange. Why does my sister-in-law go against my mother-in-law? Maybe it's because she received higher education. It's okay. In fact, I am so angry now my blood is boiling. What kind of people are these? My beautiful and lovely sister-in-law is really understanding. You ungrateful little bitch. Even though we were already at the elevator, I could still hear my mother-in-law's loud voice. People around us looked at my sister-in-law and me with strange eyes, which made me feel a little embarrassed. I didn't even see my wife when I came to the hospital. Instead, I met Anthony, who wanted to introduce me to a job. Where did my wife go? Your sister is not in the hospital. Where did she go? I walked into the elevator, pressed the floor button, and curiously asked my sister-in-law who was standing next to me and was almost as tall as me. She's not in the hospital, so I don't know where she went. Can't you just call my sister and find out? I took out my cell phone and called my wife. The call went through, but she didn't answer. Since you don't want to answer, I'm too lazy to call. How is it? My sister won't answer it. My sister-in-law asked me a question, then picked up her cell phone and called her sister. The result is the same. No one answered the call. The sister-in-law looked at the exquisite little watch on her hand and said, "That's not right. My sister should not answer the phone at this time." So she called her sister twice more, but the calls were always unanswered. She became a little anxious. When we got to the hospital entrance, she looked at me and asked, "My sister didn't even answer the phone. Could something have happened?" She looked very anxious, so she called her sister again. I made at least a dozen calls from inside the elevator to outside the hospital, but none of them went through. "Johnson, your wife is missing, and you don't seem to be in a hurry at all." Seeing that I was indifferent, my sister-in-law pushed my shoulder and asked me a question. She seldom called me by my name before. Maybe she thought I didn't care about her sister, so she was so angry when she called me by my name. "Where can you throw a person that big?" "Johnson, you." My sister-in-law was almost crying because of me, but she was still making phone calls and sending WeChat videos. She was so anxious that she wanted to call the police when she couldn't get in touch with me. It's only been a short time, and she's already so anxious. I hailed a taxi. Let's go home first." In my opinion, it is very likely that the wife is dating a man now, so she didn't answer the call. Why go home? Why don't you go find my sister? Do you still have my sister in your heart? It's true that the emperor is not anxious, but the eunuch is. Just as she finished speaking, her cell phone rang. Seeing the caller ID, she breathed a sigh of relief. "Sister, where have you been? Why didn't you answer the phone? I thought something happened to you, and I was about to call the police." "Oh, will you come back for dinner tonight?" After a pause, the sister-in-law said, "I'll be with my brother-in-law." Did you know? My mother actually said that my brother-in-law is a waste. The two women started chatting on the phone about my mother-in-law calling me a waste. From my sister-in-law's conversation, I felt that my wife was not surprised that my mother-in-law called me a waste. From the time they got home, the two sisters chatted for about half an hour before hanging up the phone. When we arrived downstairs at my house, I wanted to go home and rest, but my sister-in-law insisted on taking me to go shopping with her. She said there was no rice at home, and she couldn't carry the rice back home by herself. "Will your sister come back for dinner tonight? She won't be back to eat, so let's just cook something for the two of us." Where did she go? Why didn't she come back to eat? I didn't understand. She didn't have to go to work today, so she might have gone to have a candlelight dinner with Anthony. My sister didn't tell me. After that, we walked to the vegetable market and happened to meet our neighbor Aunt Yin. She greeted us with a smile. "Xiao Jun, your wife is getting younger and more beautiful as she gets older." When she said this, her sister-in-law blushed and quickly replied, "Andy, I am her sister-in-law, not her wife. You're a pretty girl. Are you married? Can I introduce you to someone?" "Thank you, Annie." "No thanks. I don't want to look for it yet." Aunt Yin came over and said, "The other party's conditions are quite good. His family has a house and a car, and his father is the factory director." "Annie, thank you. I'm still young and don't want to get married so early." The sister-in-law politely declined Aunt Yin. "Well, girl, whenever you want to find a partner, come to Aunt Yin and she will introduce you to a good family." After saying that, Aunt Yin greeted me and walked away with her waist twisted. Chapter 027, Introducing You. After buying vegetables and rice, my sister-in-law and I returned home. It was already past 5 in the afternoon. My sister-in-law took the initiative to cook. Seeing that she was too busy in the kitchen by herself, I helped her pick the vegetables. Looking at my sister-in-law's back, I feel weird. Why do I feel like she and I are like a couple? Sometimes it's really ridiculous to think about it. After dinner, my sister-in-law and I were the only ones at home. My wife didn't come back for dinner, and the atmosphere was awkward for a while. The sister-in-law called her sister again and asked her if she wanted to come back for dinner, but she was told that she was working overtime at the company and could not come back for dinner and would be home later. After dinner and taking a shower, my sister-in-law and I went back to our rooms. I fell asleep in bed and didn't realize it. I don't know when, I was suddenly awakened by the sound outside the door. It was already early in the morning when I woke up. I rubbed my sleepy eyes and looked at what was happening outside. It turned out that my sister-in-law, who was wearing little yellow duck pajamas, was pouring hot water to drink outside. I also felt thirsty, so I went out to get some water. "My sister hasn't come back yet?" My sister-in-law yawned and asked me a question. I shook my head, feeling extremely disappointed. No man wants his wife to stay out all night. Not yet. I poured a glass of water and drank it all. I took out my cell phone and couldn't help but call my wife. It took about 10 seconds before my wife answered my call. "Where are you? Why haven't you come home yet so late?" I questioned her in front of my sister-in-law. "I found a good job for you. I'll tell you when I get back." She just said a few simple words and hung up. He didn't even tell me when he would be home. Introduce me a good job? Haha, isn't it the job in Jongbei City that Anthony told me about today? Once I go there to work, can you and Anthony be together well? Thinking of this, I felt inexplicably angry. Suppressing the anger in my heart, I drank another glass of water. I felt so uncomfortable that I took out a bottle of white wine that I had collected for many years from the wine cabinet, poured a glass, and drank it in one gulp. "What are you doing? Why are you drinking so hard? Did my sister do something to make you so angry?" The sister-in-law, standing by, was stunned. "Tell me, what man would like his wife to drink until late at night before coming home? My sister is drinking with others outside?" My sister-in-law looked at me in disbelief. "My sister is not that kind of person. If you don't believe me, just wait. She will definitely be drunk before she comes home." "How can that be? You knew my sister was drinking outside, so why didn't you go pick her up and you let her drink?" My sister-in-law said to me angrily. "The main thing is that she won't tell me where she is. How can I pick her up?" My wife didn't even give me a chance to ask questions and just hung up on me. "Wait, let me call my sister and I'll go pick her up with you later." Before she finished speaking, she took out her cell phone and called her sister angrily. "Sister, where are you drinking? Why don't you go home?" "Where are you?" "My brother-in-law, and I will pick you up." My sister-in-law said several words in a row. "Oh, then go home quickly." There was no further news after that. My sister will be home soon. I picked up my phone and walked to the balcony, pointing the camera at the road below my house. She couldn't have come back by herself. If I'm guessing correctly, it was Anthony who sent her back. "Don't drink too much. It's bad for your health." I don't know when my sister-in-law suddenly appeared behind me and said this. I was shocked. After a while, a Mercedes-Benz came into my sight. Isn't that Anthony's car? I guessed correctly that it was Anthony who sent her home. Now I feel even worse. I didn't expect that she would cheat on me. How badly have I cheated on her? The car slowly stopped downstairs of our house, and my wife got out from the passenger seat of the Mercedes-Benz. After getting off the car, the wife leaned on the car window and chatted with the people in the car for some unknown reason before she stood up and let the car leave. She looked at her phone and stood there, typing or deleting records. I maximized the pixels of her phone camera but still couldn't see what she was doing. Was that car Anthony's? I asked my sister-in-law, who was standing next to me. It seems so. When I asked this, my sister-in-law frowned fiercely. This is impossible. How could my sister be with someone like that? 2 minutes later, the wife returned home. She tiredly put her bag on the cabinet, took off her high heels, sat on the sofa, poured herself a glass of water, and drank it. When she came in addition to the perfume in the room, there was also a strong smell of alcohol. She had been drinking. She went to drink with Anthony. Sister, why did you go home so drunk? There was dissatisfaction and questioning in the sister-in-law's caring words. It's all for your brother-in-law's work. Speaking of this, I find it really ironic and even annoyed. For my job? Haha, so that you and Anthony can have a better tryst in the future. Chapter 028 for your own good. I didn't say anything, and my wife sat down and looked at me. Husband, I found a job for you today. The salary in Zhongbei City is 3 times what you have here, and the work is easy. If you come home so late to find a job for me, then I tell you that you don't need it. I told her angrily, and then added, I have a good job now. Husband, why are you so stubborn? Why don't you want such an easy job? My wife said something to me, and then continued, look at how our family has been living since your business failed. I finally asked someone to help you get such a good job, but you don't know how to appreciate it. I don't know what's good for me. Why don't you go with such good treatment? My wife said this to me angrily, and she sounded like she was disappointed in my wife. Are you going out drinking with other men to get me a job? I'm not doing this for you. The wife pouted and said, I just want you to get more salary. I hope you can save enough money to start a comeback as soon as possible. Ha! I think you do this to make it easier for you and Anthony to date. Of course I won't say this in front of her now. Sister, are you going to ask Anthony for help? The sister-in-law who had been silent beside her suddenly asked. When Anthony was mentioned, Jessica was obviously stunned for a moment, and she glared at her sister-in-law. I did ask him for help. Sister, don't you know who Anthony is? Why are you still in contact with him? That's enough. Li Xinyue, shut up. I found you such a good job, but you don't work hard and instead make things worse. Are you still my sister? Speaking of Anthony, it must have touched her heart, and now she is angry and embarrassed. Are you going or not? Jessica stared at me and said loudly, then added, I went to ask for help with good intentions, Johnson. I also spent money. Don't be so ungrateful. I don't need the job you introduced. I want to stay and work in that store. You work in that small plumbing shop and only get paid so little a month. Are you so stingy with money? She is forcing me to go to Zhongbei City to work. How could I let her succeed? No way. I won't go to work in Zhongbei City. Also, please don't come home so late because of my social activities and drinking. No man wants his wife to be drunk and come home in the middle of the night. How dare you say that to me? I did that for you and our future. Jessica said angrily and aggrievedly. Okay, don't say anything. That's it. I drank a glass of water, left the living room, went back to my room, lay on the bed, and prepared to go back to sleep. My sister-in-law also went back to her room to sleep. Jessica took her clothes and went to the bathroom to take a shower. Everything was going the way I wanted, which was a heavy blow to me. 7 years of relationship and my precious daughter. Many past events came to my mind. The scenes of us being together, the happy family of 3, but now they are shattered in my heart and cannot be repaired. After a while, Jessica came in, wearing Mickey Mouse pajamas. She walked over to me and sat down and asked me softly, Honey, give me a reason why you don't go to work in Zhongbei. You have to know that I worked so hard to find a job for you. First, I don't want to be too far away from home. I want to take care of you and our baby daughter. I said this while holding back my anger. Second, my current job is pretty good. If I'm lucky, I might be able to make 100,000 a month. Working in Zhongbei with a salary of only 30,000 a month won't help me in my future development. Another 100,000 yuan? I've never seen you make more than 20,000 yuan a month in your company. When she said this, there was a hint of disdain in her voice. It is true that since I started working in the plumbing store, the highest salary I have ever received is around 18,000 yuan. I understand you, but we are still young and we have to fight for our future. Jessica started to lecture me. I smiled and said, stop talking about it. I don't want to go. Okay, since you don't want to go, I'll let Xinyue go. At this time, she remembered to introduce her sister to work in Zhongbei City. Oh, then you have to see if the other person is willing. Go to bed early. I'm tired. I don't really want to bother with my wife. Seeing that I ignored her, she seemed to feel guilty. If you don't want to go, don't go. Why are you so unhappy? No, actually, I feel really sad now. Okay, I'm going to discuss selling the house to pay for my brother's medical expenses. What do you think? Impossible. I answered her decisively, and then questioned her. If we sell the house to pay for his medical treatment, where will we live? You only have one life. You can make money again. She enlightened me like this. Your brother doesn't even sell his house. Why does he want me to sell it? Can you tell me why? After hearing what I said, Jessica was speechless and didn't know how to answer me. So you'd better not think about buying a house. Okay, go to bed early, Jessica said dissatisfiedly. Chapter 29, The Battle Begins. I turned my back to my wife, but she turned around and hugged me, whispering in my ear, I only have one brother. Can we discuss this matter again? Here she comes again. I told her it was impossible, but she still refused to give up. Is that okay? She acted coquettishly to me again and said, Please help my brother because my mother is working so hard to take care of our baby daughter. It's hard? They ask me for nearly 5,000 yuan every month. I don't even pay that much for a nanny. I retorted angrily, and then I took her hand away from me. Sometimes, I really doubt that you are not my wife. My wife reacted strongly to this, as if stimulated by something. She pushed me hard and said, What nonsense are you talking about? If I'm not your wife, then whose wife am I? I sneered in my heart and replied angrily, We only have this house left now. You want to sell it to pay for your brother's medical treatment? There is a limit to helping others. He has his own house. Why doesn't he sell it? It's not our turn to sell it. Besides, I bought the house in the first place. Okay, don't be angry. I won't mention the house to you again. My wife couldn't convince me, so she stopped mentioning the house. I ignored her and continued to turn my back to her and prepare to go to sleep. But when I thought about her behavior with Anthony, I couldn't help but get furious, and I turned around and pushed her down. I'm not feeling well? My wife answered me with resistance, and the more she resisted, the angrier I became. I don't know why, but I conquered her. That night we fought for nearly 2 hours before we finally stopped. We both lay exhausted on the bed, our sweat almost soaking the sheets. After such a fierce battle, she became much calmer and instead snuggled into my arms and lay quietly to sleep. Why do I always feel something weird? After so many years of marriage, this kind of life has always been dull, but today I have a different feeling. If she continues like this, she might become someone else's wife. Now that we can use it, the more the better. The next morning, it was my sister-in-law who got up early to make breakfast while my wife and I were still sleeping. We woke up when my sister-in-law called us outside to have breakfast. It's already past 9. Damn it, I'm going to be late. The wife opened her eyes and looked at the alarm clock on the bedside. Husband, if you don't want to go to Jiangbei, don't go. Oh, you really wanted me to go yesterday, but after what happened last night, you want me not to go? I'm going to work. She didn't have time to dress up today. She just washed up and went out to work. There were only my sister-in-law, and I left at home. I didn't tell Ling Ling that I came back, so I called her to tell her so that I could go to work in the store. My sister asked me to go to Jiangbei to work. Although the salary and benefits are good, I don't want to go. The sister-in-law who was eating breakfast suddenly said, Why is she telling me this? Brother-in-law, is there any position available in your store? I'll go and help you run the store. She volunteered to work in my store. I'm the only one in my shop. Sometimes when I'm out delivering goods, there's no one to look after the store, so I have to ask my neighbor from the shop next door to help look after it. I was naturally happy that my sister-in-law wanted to work there. I have to ask my boss about this. If she agrees, then it's fine. Well, brother-in-law, can you help me ask? Well, the salary might not be that high. As long as it's enough for my living expenses, that's enough. Is my sister-in-law so easily satisfied? Okay, I'll ask later. After breakfast, my sister-in-law went to wash the dishes. I called Ling Ling and said, Sister Ling, I'm back. We still need a clerk in our store. I want my sister-in-law to come over and help. Why didn't you tell me you were back? I could have a celebration party for you. Ling Ling was very happy that I was back. After a pause, she said, Well, it's okay. I'll give her a salary of 6,000 yuan a month plus commission from the store's sales. What do you think? Very good. Thank you, Sister Ling. Ling Ling treats her sister-in-law quite well. Xiao Lu from the shop next door only earns more than 5,000 yuan a month, but he has no commission and only a fixed salary. Then it's settled. Johnson, it's not a good idea for you to take the bus to work all day. I got you a car. Come over here and let me take a look at the car later. Thank you, Sister Ling. I'm not being hypocritical. It's really inconvenient to go to work without a car, especially when you're negotiating business with clients. When they see that you can't even afford a car, they won't be willing to give you orders. This principle is similar to the fact that you can pick up girls by driving a luxury car. Xinyue, you will start working today. You will get 6,000 yuan per month with commissions if you perform well. Do you think this is okay? Okay, I'll get ready and go to work with you. Chapter 030, Everything is ready. My sister-in-law and I took a taxi to the store. I told her about the daily routine of the store, showed her the price book of some of the plumbing products in the store, and told her which brands they were from. On her first day at work, she didn't understand a lot. I told her to look after the store while I went to visit Ling Ling. I want to ask what Anthony's current situation is. I will definitely not miss the opportunity to take revenge on him. Anthony's wife in Jiangbei. I wonder if she received it. She hasn't responded at all until now. Anthony is just a son-in-law. After doing such a thing, can his wife let him go? Let's go to Ling Ling to get some information first. It's working hours now. Ling Ling is working in the company. I called her and told her I would visit her after I get off work. She asked me to meet her in her office and go to the company garage to choose a car. Soon I arrived at the headquarters of Milea Company. The Milea Company building is more than 20 stories high and covers a large area. It looks very impressive. It demonstrates its strong strength on the surface. It is worthy of being one of the top 10 large enterprises in Jiangdong City. Ling Ling's office is in room 6 on the top floor of Building 8. As soon as I arrived at Ling Ling, my secretary was waiting for me downstairs and led the way for me, saving me a lot of trouble, especially the access control area. As soon as I walked into the company's green parking space, I suddenly saw my wife's car parked there. I frowned. Doesn't my wife work at the Mariah branch? Why did she come to the head office? According to my wife's current level, she rarely comes to the head office unless there is an important matter or she is sent by her leader. Mr. Huang, please come this way. Seeing that I was stunned for a moment, Ling Ling's assistant politely made a please gesture to me. I came to my senses and followed the assistant. Before leaving, I did not forget to take a look at my wife's car. I really wanted to ask the assistant about the car. After all, it was their company's business, and it would not be good if I asked too much. I suppressed my curiosity and didn't ask. The last 3 floors of the elevator require card swiping and are specially prepared for the senior management of Mariah Company. The elevator slowly rose and soon reached the top floor. There are quite a lot of offices on the top floor. As soon as I got out of the elevator, the assistant took me towards Ling Ling's office. When I reached office number 8, the door suddenly opened and my wife walked out. Her eyes were red, and it was obvious that she had just cried. She was also shocked when she saw me, almost scared. I quickly wiped away my tears and involuntarily glanced towards the office behind me. Why are you here? After a moment, she calmed down and asked me, come over and discuss some business. Talk about business? What business? The wife asked questions. Business in the store? I said casually. Why are you here instead of staying in the branch office? Get some documents. I need to go back now. We'll talk about it when I get home tonight. After a brief exchange of words, the wife left in a hurry. When she reached the corner of the elevator, she didn't forget to look back at me. Walking through the door of office number 8 and looking through the crack, I was shocked to see Anthony sitting on a chair with a clean brush in his hand and an evil smile on his face. As expected, the wife came to see Anthony. Did anything happen between them in the office just now? Thinking carefully, his wife had just come out of Anthony's room. She was dressed neatly and nothing should have happened. But the sight of Anthony holding the pen that had never been stained with ink, plus his wife's red eyes, made me think of the dark side. Mr. Huang, please. While I was thinking, my assistant reminded me again. Oh, okay. After walking a few steps, I arrived at the door of Ling Ling's office. The assistant knocked gently on the door. Come in. Ling Ling's gentle voice came from inside. When I opened the door, I saw Ling Ling wearing a black suit, sitting on a chair and working. She was concentrating. She really looks beautiful and has a special temperament when she is working. Sometimes I even feel that she has an indescribable temperament more than my wife. You're here, sit down. Ling Ling stood up, walked in front of me, and made a gesture. I sat down without hesitation. Thanks to you for this order. Ling Ling poured me a glass of water and smiled. I have to thank Sister Ling for the promotion. I exchanged a few polite words with her, and then asked, Sister Ling, what's the situation with Anthony now? He was demoted and punished by the company. Ling Ling answered casually, and then asked me curiously, why do you care about Anthony so much? Oh, I'm just asking out of curiosity. This didn't bring him down. Anthony still had some talent. Although he was unwilling, he had no choice but to look for another opportunity. If I get the chance, I'll beat him to death. A plan emerged in my mind that even scared me. After drinking the water, Ling Ling talked to me a lot about the company and asked me if I was willing to come to work in the company. Thank you for your care, Sister Ling. I think I can run the plumbing shop well. A talent like you, I won't treat you unfairly when you come. Ling Ling didn't give up. She hoped that I would work with her in the future. If you want to come, I'll give you 50,000 yuan a month. Chapter 031. Human Relationships. Sister Ling, I still want to stay in the plumbing shop. If you need anything, you can come to me. I don't want Anthony and his wife to know about my relationship with Ling Ling. Since my business failed, my wife only knows that I work in a plumbing shop, and she doesn't know who the boss is. Well, all right then. Seeing that I was unwilling, Ling Ling did not force me. She took me to the garage downstairs to check out the car. When we passed office number 8, a cleaning lady was cleaning the office. The door was open, and I looked in from outside and saw a garbage bag on the floor filled with white tissues. Could Anthony use that many tissues so early in the morning? Now I felt so upset that I didn't look at the garbage bag again. Maybe I could find something like Okamoto's in it. I'm really curious if that's what's in there. After a while, Ling Ling and I arrived at the basement garage. There were a lot of cars worth 2 or 300,000 yuan. These are all company cars. Choose one. I randomly picked one that cost over 200,000 yuan. Well, okay, this is the one. Ling Ling handed me the car keys. Are you free tonight? I'll host a celebration party for you. Sister Ling, there's no need to go to great lengths. Okay then, I'll treat you to a meal. Ling Ling said casually. Okay, that's settled. I would be very happy if a beauty like Ling Ling treated me to a meal. Okay then, see you at Jinzhou restaurant at 7 p.m. Okay. I drove back to the store and found my sister-in-law was anxiously looking for something. I couldn't help but frown. Judging from her anxious expression, something must have happened. I parked the car and returned to the store, and sure enough, my sister-in-law told me that her cell phone was missing and she couldn't find it. I remember I put it here to charge. My sister-in-law pointed to the empty table near the charging cable socket and asked, "How come it disappeared?" I shook my head and smiled bitterly. This girl's phone must have been stolen by someone. Did anyone come to the store to buy something just now? Well, a man came to me and said he wanted to buy a valve. Then he left without buying it. The sister-in-law frowned, as if she had thought of something. Then she suddenly realized, did someone steal the phone? Let me check the surveillance. Sitting in front of the computer in the store, I looked up the surveillance footage. Sure enough, half an hour ago, someone came to buy something. From the surveillance video, we can clearly see that when the sister-in-law turned around to get the valve, the man took away her mobile phone. My sister-in-law lowered her head, bent over to look at the computer, and leaned very close to me. I turned around and saw that place, and I felt like I was suffocating. She was staring at the video and didn't notice the scene. I took one look, and my heart started beating faster, so I quickly turned around. He's the one who stole my phone. What should I do? Report the loss of your phone card immediately and call the police. Good. She bit her lip and said, thieves are rampant nowadays. I know that my sister-in-law's cell phone is probably gone. Regardless of whether you find it or not, you must call the police. The sister-in-law who didn't have a mobile phone had red cheeks. In this age of mobile phones, she would definitely feel scared if she didn't touch her mobile phone for a day or two. My sister-in-law just graduated from college, and her cell phone was stolen on her first day at work. Where could she get the money to buy a new cell phone? Brother-in-law, do you have a used cell phone that's still usable? My sister-in-law asked in a low voice. Judging from her expression, she was very upset about losing her phone. I don't have this one. Come with me to the mobile phone store later, and I'll buy you a new one. This is not good. The sister-in-law did not accept it and was silent for a moment. Brother-in-law, I will return it to you when I get my salary. Oh, my sister-in-law works very hard. Not long after I was away, she cleaned the shop and wiped away the dust from the goods on the cabinets. People who do this kind of business cannot wait for business to come to them in the store. They must go out and run around. No business will come to them on its own initiative. After receiving information from various sources, I heard from a friend that my friend Su Cheng's construction site was short of a batch of goods, which I happened to have in my store. Before my business failed, I introduced all his construction projects to him and helped him a lot. I think if we go find him, it should be easy to close this deal. After thinking about it, I called Su Qingjia first. It's been a while since I last saw Qingjia. You've been feeling pretty good lately. Who are you? Su Qingjia doesn't even recognize my voice. I'm Johnson. It's been a long time indeed. How have you been lately? He also started to be polite to me. It's not like that. I just opened a plumbing shop. I had only said this when Su Qingjia interrupted me. I'm sorry why you didn't tell me earlier. I've already found a supplier. I'll buy you a drink next time. He refused, and the information I got was that the batch of materials for his construction site had just been listed and he had not yet found a supplier. It's obvious that he doesn't want to give me this order. How fickle people are? When you have money, they all try to curry favor with you. But when you have no money, They treat you like trash and discard you. Oh, it's okay. I hope we have a chance to work together, I said to Su Qingjia with a smile. Well, I'm busy now. I'll buy you a drink next time. Su Qingjia said a few perfunctory words to me and then hung up the phone. Chapter 032. Enemies meet on a narrow road. I sighed deeply. I was so blind to help him in the first place. Now that you need him, he doesn't even pay attention to you. I met a lot of people and visited many construction sites in the afternoon, but didn't get any orders. This was normal for me. I returned to the store around 5 in the afternoon, and my sister-in-law was packing up and preparing to close the store and go home. There's no one in the store at this time, so it's time to call it a day and go home. Xinyue, let's go to the mobile phone store to look at the mobile phones. It can be seen that my sister-in-law doesn't want to borrow money from me, but it is particularly inconvenient not to have a mobile phone in this era. Brother-in-law, lend me some money first and I'll give it to you after I get my salary. My sister-in-law mentioned this to me again. Well, you wait here while I go drive. Car? Where did you get the car? My sister-in-law asked me curiously. My boss gave it to me. She didn't ask any more questions and just waited for me obediently in front of the store. I went to a mobile phone store with her, and my sister-in-law chose an Android phone that cost more than 1,000 yuan. The brand is pretty good. Why don't you buy a better one? As long as it works, the sister-in-law said with a smile, and then added, I'm afraid I won't have the money to pay you back when the time comes. When she said this, I noticed that she was always secretly glancing at a mobile phone that cost more than 4,000 yuan out of the corner of her eye. It was obvious that she liked that phone very much, but she just couldn't bear to buy it. That's it. I asked the clerk to pick up the phone that my sister-in-law had just focused on, and then said, pay it back to me slowly when you have money later. My sister-in-law wanted to say something, but I asked the clerk to just take the new phone and pack it up. Opposite the mobile phone store was a century-old jewelry store. After I paid and turned to walk out, I happened to see Anthony and a middle-aged woman shopping in the jewelry store. I don't know that woman, but judging from her noble appearance, she should be Anthony's wife. I was wondering, didn't Anthony's wife receive my express delivery? Or perhaps the express was intercepted by Anthony before it reached his wife. I remember that the address I sent the express to was Anthony's office address. Maybe it was sent to Anthony by mistake. After much thought, I finally decided to buy a USB flash drive from a mobile phone store, copy the video of Anthony's sexual harassment, and find an opportunity to confirm and give it to his wife. Since he came to buy jewelry, it seems that Anthony has a good relationship with his wife. The clerk in the mobile phone store was installing a mobile phone for my sister-in-law while I was observing Anthony and his wife. During this period, I was surprised to find that Anthony had a young daughter who was very beautiful. From a distance, I saw that her daughter was in her early 20s. Accompanying Anthony and his wife to look at jewelry, an evil thought popped up in my mind, but I quickly suppressed it with my reason. After watching for 2 minutes, the clerk finally fixed my sister-in-law's phone and replaced the SIM card. I bought a USB drive from the clerk and downloaded the video of Anthony groping on my phone into it. Wait, you go back first. I have something else to do, and we'll be back later. I said to my sister-in-law beside me. Where are you going? Are you going home for dinner later? Okay, go back and cook first. I'll be home in a bit. Seeing that I didn't want to say more, my sister-in-law didn't ask any more questions, and she took a taxi home by herself. I put on a mask and walked towards the jewelry store across the street, carefully observing Anthony and his wife and their fashionably dressed daughter. I have to find a way to give this USB drive to Anthony's wife. I couldn't just walk over and give the USB drive to Anthony's wife in front of him. They bought the jewelry and were about to pay for it, but Anthony forgot to take his bag and walked out of the jewelry store. I passed him and walked into the jewelry store and came up to his wife, who was indeed a wealthy lady. While Anthony was not around, I turned on my phone, deliberately stood in front of Anthony's wife, and played the video of Anthony's sexual harassment. This angle is just right. Anthony's wife immediately realized that the man in the video was her husband. Sir, where did you shoot this video? Anthony's wife suddenly asked me a question. This is for you. You will understand when you see it. I handed the USB drive to Anthony's wife and turned to leave the jewelry store. I didn't leave immediately, but sat in the car and observed the situation in the jewelry store. I want to confirm whether Anthony's wife has received the USB drive I sent her. After a while, I saw her daughter running out of the store, looking around, and then walking into the jewelry store. I think her daughter came out to ask me about the video. After a while, Anthony returned to the jewelry store. Just as he took out his bag to pay, Anthony's wife came out of the jewelry store angrily with a look in her face. Anthony followed closely behind, looking bitter and wanting to explain. As a result, Anthony's wife slapped him in the face and left with her daughter, leaving Anthony standing there in a daze. He was stunned for a long time before he came to his senses, with a look of resentment and confusion on his face. I guess he must be wondering how this video ended up in his wife's hands. I deliberately observed the spot for about 2 minutes and saw Anthony holding a mobile phone and talking to someone. Chapter 0, 33 Tracking and Discovery. Then he walked towards his car, and I followed him quietly, thinking that I should follow him and maybe I could make some new discoveries. What I find strange is that this time he went to Jongbei to gather for XX and was arrested by the police. And his wife went out with him to buy jewelry, but after seeing the video of this groping, she slapped him. This is unscientific. Unless his wife didn't know that he was arrested in Jongbei for gathering for XX, and it was Wang Mingliang who released him. Only a few people knew about Anthony's gang rape, and his wife probably didn't know about it yet. If he tells this to his wife, wouldn't he be even more miserable? If I get a chance, I will tell his wife about this. I drove behind Anthony's car and followed him all the way. Finally, he drove the car to the gate of his wife's company. I saw my wife and Lu Yinfeng walking out of the company's gate, and my wife walked towards Anthony with a smile on her face. Lu Yinfeng stood aside, with a hint of jealousy in her eyes. Soon his wife got in the car, and Lu Yinfeng followed. My wife sat in the passenger seat, while Lu Yinfeng sat in the back seat. I slammed the steering wheel hard, wishing I could drive the car and smash Anthony to pieces. That there is nothing going on between my wife and Anthony. My eyes were still red when I walked out of Anthony's office in the morning, but now I got into Anthony's car. My wife and Anthony going? And that Lu Yinfeng. I suppressed my anger and followed them closely. I wanted to see what they were doing. Anthony's car stopped at a large shopping mall in the city center. There was a restaurant on the top floor of the mall. There is a fast hotel opposite the shopping mall, and behind the hotel is our Jongbei City's notorious red light district. Before 8 o'clock, the alley was already filled with women dressed seductively. After I parked my car in the open-air parking lot, I called my wife. "Will you be back for dinner tonight?" I asked casually. "No, I have to work overtime tonight and may be home late." My wife answered me like this. "Oh, where are you? Why is it so noisy around here?" There were too many people and too many noises. "I'm in the company cafeteria, getting ready to eat." "I'm going to eat." She hung up the phone on me. Now I am even more certain that I have probably been cuckolded, and there is a green grassland on my head. 7 years of love just went down the drain. I really can't accept this. I bought a hat and put on a mask and walked into the mall. They should be eating at this time. Just as I was about to go up to the top floor to take a look, Anthony came towards me. As we walked out of the mall, Anthony didn't recognize me because I was wearing a mask and a hat, and I didn't have much contact with him. I followed Anthony as he came to a sex toy store next to the mall. From a distance, it seemed that in addition to the basic safety measures, what he bought also included a bottle of potion with a very suggestive woman painted on the packaging. In addition to these, he actually bought a set of thin clothes. This style is so similar to the one under my bed at home. Could it be that the clothes in the bag under my sister-in-law's bed are not my mother-in-law's, but my wife's? Anthony bought it for his wife? I was so angry that I wanted to take a kitchen knife and kill the person in front of me. After making his purchase, Anthony put the potion in his coat pocket and returned the security items to the boss. He didn't seem to need any safety measures and just used real guns and live ammunition. The images that emerged in my mind made me feel really sick. It's so crazy. They didn't even take any safety measures. After a while, he entered the mall and went to the rooftop. Because there were so many people, he didn't notice that I was following him. I followed him to the top floor smoothly, and he walked into a Western restaurant with a romantic theme. To avoid being seen, I didn't get too close. My wife was sitting by the window, alone, and I didn't see Lu Yinfeng. My wife and Anthony came to the Western restaurant to eat alone. Anthony went in and sat opposite his wife. They talked and laughed, just like a couple. I found an angle and picked up my phone to take a picture. While they were eating, Anthony did not forget to put some food into his wife's bowl, and his wife did not refuse to eat. I also took a picture of this scene. They must have gone to the hotel after dinner. My heart immediately became uneasy, and I was thinking about notifying Anthony's wife to come and catch him. As a person involved, I should have stepped forward, but I wanted to pretend that I didn't know and wait until the most critical moment to give them a fatal blow. If I caught them, what else would I have left except divorce? I really couldn't bear a divorce like this. After finishing their meal, the two walked out of the restaurant. As I expected, Anthony and Jessica walked out of the restaurant and went downstairs. They were taking the box elevator, and I couldn't ride in the same elevator with them. You can only take the open-air elevators in shopping malls. My speed was obviously slower than theirs. When I reached the second floor, they had already walked out of the elevator entrance on the first floor. The two stood very close to each other and looked like a couple. When walking on the street, many men looked at their wives. Another man stared at his wife for a few seconds. Then his wife pinched him hard, and he cried out in pain. I rushed downstairs and followed them. They walked onto the overpass and indeed went to the hotel across the street to get a room. I was in a state of confusion at this moment. With trembling hands, he took out his cell phone and called Ling Ling. Sister Ling, do you have Anthony's wife's cell phone number? Ling Ling is a senior executive of Mariah Company. Anthony's wife is also the daughter of a shareholder of the company. Ling Ling should have her phone number. Yes, I'll send it to you. Ling Ling didn't ask me anything else. Soon I received a message on my mobile phone from a number called Ling Ling. The wife and Anthony slowly walked down the overpass. After getting off the overpass, I walked towards a motel next to it. The billboard above the Express Hotel said something like, hourly room for 3 hours 180. When they arrived at the hotel entrance, the wife suddenly stopped. Anthony patted her shoulder and whispered something in her ear. Chapter 034, Plan 1. The wife calmed down, and suddenly she pushed Anthony away and pointed at him, not knowing what was going on. Her voice was not loud, and because she was afraid of being discovered, I kept my distance and couldn't hear what she and Anthony were arguing about. Anthony spread his hands, looking confused, as if he wanted to explain something to his wife. But his wife didn't listen to him at all. She turned around, walked to the side of the road, hailed a taxi, and left. Anthony tried to keep her, but she pushed him away. The dramatic reversal left me at a loss. You were about to go to the hotel with Anthony to get a room, but when you arrived at the hotel door, you had a big quarrel with Anthony? Why? Because I didn't get close enough to know what they were arguing about. The plan was to ask Anthony's wife to catch him cheating, but now the plan has gone to waste. As I walked to the edge of the overpass, my cell phone rang, which scared me. My sister-in-law called and asked me if I wanted to go back for dinner. I'll be back soon. This was my reply to my sister-in-law, and soon I returned to the mall's open-air parking lot and drove home. Now that his wife was gone, there was no point in continuing to stalk Anthony. Furthermore, I must find a way to pass the news of Anthony's gang riot in Jeongbei City to his wife. My intuition tells me that my wife and Anthony must have some unspeakable secret. Only then did I remember that Ling Ling was going to treat me to dinner in the evening. Ling Ling is very nice to me. I can't break my promise for this dinner. After much thought, I called my sister-in-law and told her that I would not be going back for dinner that night because of something urgent. I looked at the watch, and it was almost 7 o'clock. I drove to the hotel Ling Ling had booked. Less than 5 minutes after I arrived, Ling Ling also arrived. She was wearing a white off-shoulder long dress today and walked towards me with graceful steps. She looked so beautiful with her long hair. This is the first time I see Ling Ling wearing a long skirt. It was really rare before. There were only 2 of us at this dinner, she and I, and we occupied a private room. The atmosphere was quite awkward. During the meal, Ling Ling and I talked a lot about the future development of the plumbing shop. During the conversation, I learned that one of her friends was an investor in Su Qingjia's current project and had the right to get that order. I didn't want that order at first, but Ling Ling told me that the project had a large volume of cargo and she had already made arrangements with her friends. As long as I treat her friends to a meal and show some interest, I can get the order. She also told me to act fast. Don't worry, Sister Ling. When will we meet your friend? Tomorrow night. Ling Ling wouldn't have told me this unless she was absolutely sure, and all the problems were solved. I believe Su Qingjia didn't expect that I would have this kind of relationship. Johnson, you did a great job on this order. Anthony lost. The company's HR department transferred him to another branch. He was transferred to a branch? Which branch? My heart couldn't help but tighten. What I was most worried about was that Anthony was transferred to the branch where my wife worked. If that happened, wouldn't the 2 of them be able to cheat on me in the office every day? I feel unhappy when I think of this. The company decided to transfer him to the branch in Jeongbei City, but he used his father-in-law's connections to force himself to stay in Jiangdong City and work in our branch. Something I didn't want to see happened. This is what I least want to see. Sister Ling, is there any way to stop him? He's been demoted, why stop him? Ling Ling asked me curiously, and then said, Johnson, I noticed that you are too hostile to Anthony. Do you have any disputes with him? Family disgrace should not be made public. I can't tell Ling Ling about this. I see he's not feeling well, and I don't want him to stay in Jiangdong. That's all? Ling Ling looked at me curiously. Well, I wonder if Sister Ling has any way to get him to Jeongbei City. I'm afraid there's nothing I can do about this. The company has already made the decision. Ling Ling sighed helplessly. What if his gathering for XX in Jiangbei City is exposed? That's another matter. It depends on how you look at it with the money. Qian Lai is one of the major shareholders of Mariah Company, and Anthony is father-in-law. Qian Lai didn't know about his mob in Jiangbei City. No matter what, I will beat Anthony to death. His gang riot in Jiangbei City must be exposed, and he must not be allowed to work in his wife's branch company. Johnson, I sense that you really hate Anthony. I have a hunch that you have a grudge against him. Ling Ling said it directly. Sister Ling, I do have a grudge against him, but there are some things that I can't talk about, and it's hard to say. I explained to Ling Ling. Since it is your business, it is also my business. I will use my greatest strength to help you deal with him. Ling Ling told me very seriously, and then said, Qian Lai is already 78 years old this year. It is said that he has been ill recently and has no children. Once he passes away, the inheritance rights of Milia shares will fall into the hands of Anthony and his wife. It will be difficult to deal with Anthony at that time. Ling Ling analyzed it to me. In other words, before Qian Lai died, the relationship between Anthony and his wife must be alienated. As long as their relationship breaks down, it will be much easier to deal with Anthony. Of course, while dealing with Anthony, I cannot let go of my wife, who makes me feel ashamed. Johnson, I'm really curious about how Anthony offended you. Sister Ling, there are some things I can't tell you, so don't force me to say it. I felt very bitter. I couldn't tell Ling Ling that the mistress Anthony had outside was most likely my current wife. I can't say this, and I don't have the face to say it. Ling Ling and I each drank quite a bit of wine tonight. Ling Ling agreed to help me. With her help, it would not be difficult to spread the news of Anthony's gang riot in Jiangbei City to Mariah Company. This is just my first step. After eating and drinking, Ling Ling and I took a walk along the river. We talked for a long time about the store. She also told me that there would be some major events in Mariah Company recently, but she didn't tell me what they were. Based on my understanding of Ling Ling, she would never say anything good. She was indirectly telling me to buy the company's stock. I'm very clear about this. With such reliable information, how can I not make money? After much thought, I decided to buy some company shares tomorrow. She didn't tell me whether it was good news or bad news. In short, the fundamentals of Malaya Company are very good, and the concept is also good. As long as there is no stock market crash or a huge negative news, it will be able to make some profit more or less. It's getting late. Go back early. Before I knew it, it was already past 10 o'clock, and I could feel that Ling Ling beside me was very tired. Well, I'll take you back. It's so late. I naturally can't let Ling Ling go back alone. Chapter 035 Inexplicable Change. After sending Ling Ling home, I drove home alone. Before I even got home, my cell phone rang. I didn't answer the phone. After a while, she called again, and again, at least 5 or 6 times. I stopped the car and picked up the phone. Honey, where are you? Why aren't you home so late? Normally, she said she would drink until very late before going home. But today she called me before 11 o'clock and asked me where I was. I don't understand this. Her heart is with Anthony, so why would she care where I am? I'm out having dinner with a client. I said without hesitation. I will be back later. Later? When? She seemed to be urging me to go home quickly. Is there anything wrong at home? I asked her back. Nothing. I just wanted you to go home early and didn't want you to drink outside. Her attitude suddenly confused me. How could she change so suddenly? Could it be that she had had a quarrel with Anthony and needed me to comfort her? I sneered in my heart. I saw that she was about to get a hotel room with Anthony, and I didn't know what they had quarreled about. Finally, the wife pushed Anthony away, hailed a car, and left. It seemed to me that she must have had a quarrel with Anthony and was coming to me for comfort, feeling sick. I really can't get used to her sudden concern. No choice for life. I just said a few words. I originally wanted to go home immediately, but after she called me, I didn't want to go home anymore. I slept in the store at night and didn't go back. Then you should go home earlier and drink less. Her voice was tearful, and I didn't know what she was crying about or for whom. It should be for Anthony. I don't think I'm that charming. I parked my car in the parking space in front of the store, opened the door, and went back into the store. There was a mezzanine on the second floor of the store. I made a small room there, took a shower, and lay on the bed. As soon as I laid down on the quilt, the fragrance hit me in the face. This smell reminds me of my sister-in-law at home. She has this smell on her body. Did she take a nap here at noon? My mind is full of random thoughts that I can't control. My wife called me again and said, Honey, why haven't you come back yet? What are you doing outside? I told you to go to a client dinner. Don't make a fuss. Female client? The wife said again. Man, I won't be going home at night, so you should go to bed early. After saying that, I hung up. Just a few seconds after I hung up the phone, my sister-in-law sent me a video chat. I rejected it, thinking it must be my wife who asked her to send it. Brother-in-law, why don't you go home so late? What are you doing? I have an important client to entertain. I won't be back tonight. All right. Afterwards, I didn't say much to my sister-in-law. I don't know how, but I fell asleep while lying down. The sound of a door opening woke me up from my dream. My sister-in-law came to open the shop door. I looked at the time, and it was already past 8 in the morning. There were more than a dozen missed calls on my phone, most of which were from my wife. Only one call was from my sister-in-law. I was busy all day yesterday and was exhausted, so I fell asleep as soon as I lay down. I also turned my phone to silent mode, so it was normal that I didn't see the call from them. The first thing I have to do today is to go to the construction site where Su Cheng's family is and find Ling Ling's friend to get the order. After some preparation, I will place an order to buy shares of Mariah Company later. After washing up in the room, I went downstairs. Before I got downstairs, my sister-in-law suddenly screamed, and her voice scared me. When I came to my senses, I found that my sister-in-law was holding a water pipe pointing at the stairs. When my sister-in-law saw me, she relaxed. Brother-in-law, did you sleep here last night? Yeah. Have you eaten? Not yet. I'll pack you some breakfast. I need to go out for a while. You didn't go to see another woman last night? I don't know what's wrong with my sister-in-law. She asked me this question for no reason. What nonsense are you talking about? I heard from my sister that you went to see a woman last night. My sister-in-law looked at me with a questioning look. You listen to her nonsense. Brother-in-law, I'm telling you, if you really dare to do this, we'll beat you. The sister-in-law gestured with her pair of pink fists in a very ferocious manner. Seeing how cute she is, I can't help but laugh, and sometimes I really want to reach out and touch her head. Don't worry, I won't do such a thing. Speaking of this, I feel very emotional. It is true that I have been chaste and have never touched other women in all these years of marriage with my wife, but my wife did such a thing and even falsely accused me of being with another woman last night. That would be best. My sister-in-law pouted and started cleaning. Cleaning the store is the first thing my sister-in-law does every morning. I went out to have breakfast and brought one for my sister-in-law before driving away. Su Cheng's construction site is a bit far from my store, and it takes half an hour to drive there. For this order, I raced against time and only drove for about 20 minutes instead of half an hour. The reason why I went to the construction site was because Ling Ling's friend asked me to go there in advance to find out more. The entire construction site is quite large, and there are a lot of valves, materials, pipes, and other things needed for the construction. Almost all of these things are available from the manufacturers in our store. As I was about to walk in, the security guard stopped me and asked, "What are you doing?" I walked over to the security guard with a smile and handed him a cigarette. "I'm selling valves. Please take care of me, big brother." After saying that, I stuffed the whole pack of cigarettes into the security guard's hand and smiled. The security guard didn't hesitate. He put the cigarette in his pocket in front of me and said to me with a smile, "Our purchasing department is over there. You can go over and take a look." "Thank you, brother." I turned around and walked towards the shed where the person in charge was. "The construction site is very dangerous. Please be careful." The security guard chased after me and handed me a safety helmet. I thanked him again. Soon I was outside the project manager's office. Just as I was about to knock on the door, Su Qingjia came out. When he saw me, he was stunned for a moment, and a hint of impatience flashed in his eyes. But he still said, "Johnson, why are you here?" "Mr. Su, let's make it a deal." A fat man with fat ears walked out. I had some impression of this person. He had a store near our plumbing market. He is also a plumbing seller, and Su Qingjia plans to give this order to him. "I'll go first." The fat man also looked at me and walked out. "Well, Mr. Liu, take care." Su Qingjia responded to him happily. Chapter 036 Blatant. After waiting for the fat man to leave, I felt Su Qingjia look at me with some impatience. He turned and walked into the office and took out an envelope from under the desk. The envelope should contain 10,000 yuan. I didn't understand what he meant. He just put the envelope on the table and said to me, "Johnson, thank you for helping me that year. Take this money and go. I can't give you this bill." Su Qingjia made his words very clear. If I hadn't been there, would he be where he is today? When I introduced that project to him, others offered me help for hundreds of thousands of dollars, but I refused. I didn't take a penny from him for introducing that project to him. Now you're using 10,000 yuan to humiliate me? Haha, if he gives me this 10,000 yuan and does enough surface work, no one will say that he is ungrateful. Why not gain both fame and fortune? I felt seriously that he was humiliating me by taking the 10,000 yuan. Su Qingjia, I treat you as a brother. What do you treat me as? I was really angry. I don't have a brother as unsuccessful as you. Take this money and leave quickly. From now on, we owe each other nothing. Haha. This Su Qingjia changes his attitude faster than turning the pages of a book. The fickleness of human nature. I was really blind at the time. This is what they call when someone falls, everyone pushes him down. When my business had not failed, he kept calling me brother left and right to curry favor with me. Now that my business has failed, he has directly severed our friendship. That's fine. From now on, we are no longer friends. You can take care of yourself. I didn't even look at the money on his desk and turned away from Su Qingjia's office. I was sincere to him, but he was indifferent to me. I finally saw this person's true face. Friends like him are not worth making friends with at all. Just after leaving Su Qingjia's office, a black luxury car drove in from the construction site, and a tall woman got out of the car. The woman has an excellent temperament and image, which makes people feel comfortable when looking at her. The woman was wearing a white shirt and black suit pants. When she walked in from the door, the security guard respectfully handed her a burgundy hat. I even greeted her. I saw her walk in from outside and head straight towards Su Qingjia's office. I was just about to walk out of the corridor outside Su Qingjia's office. Isn't this woman Ling Ling's friend Lin Lin? I almost got the two girls' names confused because they sound so similar. Hello, Mr. Lin. I walked up to Lin Lin and greeted her. Lin Lin looked at me with confusion. Who are you? My name is Johnson, a friend of Sister Ling. After introducing herself, Lin Lin smiled and asked, How do you know me? Mr. Lin, I just arrived not long ago. I am not very familiar with the surrounding environment. No one is leading the way, so I haven't seen it yet. Oh, I'll let Su Qingjia take you to see it. I was about to say something when Su Qingjia came out of the office. When he saw Lin Lin, his face was full of smiles. Boss Lin, why did you come in person? Unless it is something particularly important. Lin Lin usually doesn't come to the construction site. You came just in time to start a family. Take Johnson to the construction site. He will provide all the plumbing materials in the future. Lin Lin said very directly and domineeringly. Su Qingjia was stunned, but he soon recovered and smiled. Okay, I'll take Brother Johnson to the construction site. Do you two know each other? Lin Lin looked at me and Su Qingjia and asked with a smile on her face. I know him. He is my... Su Qingjia was about to say something, but I couldn't bear to hear it anymore, so I interrupted him and said, We know each other, but I'm not familiar with him. Oh, Qingjia, take Johnson to familiarize himself with the construction site. Su Qingjia didn't dare to say anything. Not long after the construction site started, Lin Lin replaced Su Qingjia with just one sentence. Su Qingjia's attitude towards me immediately improved. He said to me flatteringly after walking a few steps, Brother, it was a misunderstanding just now, a misunderstanding. Misunderstanding or not, we have severed our relationship. From now on, you are you and I am me. Brother, I was wrong just now. I'll buy you a drink some other day. Please say a few good words for me in front of Lin Lin. I ignored Su Qingjia and walked forward. My foot happened to kick a brick. I thought my foot would hurt, but I didn't feel much pain. The brick I kicked broke into several pieces and some powdery stuff fell off. This is obviously a defective brick, the kind of cheap, rotten brick. The appearance of this kind of bricks on construction sites poses a great safety hazard. I looked at the pile of bricks in front of me, picked up a brick, and broke it with both hands. Su Qingjia couldn't help but frown when he saw this. I turned around and stared at Su Qingjia. Some money can be earned, and some money cannot be earned. I plan to tell Lin Lin about this. Once this batch of bricks are used on the construction site, there might be a collapse someday causing a major accident, and Lin Lin will definitely be implicated. I can't just watch this happen. Johnson, what are you going to do? We are brothers after all. You can't hurt me. When Su Qingjia saw me walking towards the office with a brick, he hurriedly grabbed me. I'm hurting you, I'm saving you. Have you ever thought about it? If a major accident happens after using these things, you're the first person responsible. What will you do then? Here's $50,000 for you to take and pretend this never happened. Chapter 037. Live and Die. The person who just told me to get lost now has the nerve to talk to me about brotherhood again. Even if he is really a brother, if I encounter such a thing, I will ask him to replace all the defective products. You think too much. I will tell Mr. Lin about this. Are you going to corner me? I helped you so much back then, but now I come to you and you treat me like that. I think there is nothing more to say between us. Let's just be honest. I didn't care what Su Qingjia said. I went straight to Lin Lin's office and told her about the defective bricks. After hearing this, Lin Lin immediately took technical personnel to the site for inspection, and the results showed that it was indeed a defective product. Su Qingjia, I trusted you so much, but you did such a thing. Lin Lin looked at Su Qingjia with a frosty face and indifference. Mr. Lin, I admit that this is my fault. I promise not to make such a mistake again. Su Qingjia still fantasized that he could continue working at this construction site. You're fired. It was already a good thing that he was not held responsible for something like this. I will find someone to hand over to you tomorrow. If you are not happy, let's let the police handle this matter. Lin Lin's attitude was tough, and Su Qingjia was stunned. His future was over. Maybe before he wanted Mr. Liu to get some defective products to pass off as good ones. Thank you, Mr. Lin. Su Qingjia didn't dare to say anything more. He turned around and went back to the office to move his things. Johnson, thank you so much for today. If this hadn't been discovered, there would have been a major safety hazard. Lin Lin sincerely thanked me. I'll treat you to dinner later. How can you, a bunch of good-for-nothings, be supervisors? Go to every corner of the construction site and check all the materials to see where these defective products have been used. All of them must be redone. Next, the construction site director was scolded by Lin Lin so badly that he didn't dare to say a word and could only let Lin Lin scold him. In the end, she asked me to go back first and then treated me to dinner in the evening to express her gratitude. With the relationship with Ling Ling and my discovery at the construction site, the order for this project is secure. This made me feel relieved, but what I didn't expect was that Su Qingjia was such a person, which really disappointed me. In the blink of an eye, it was already noon, and I found a nearby restaurant to eat. Not long after I sat down, my wife sent me a video. I didn't answer the video call, but hung up and continued eating. Where are you? Why aren't you answering the video? My wife sent me a text message, and I always felt that she suspected that I was with another woman. I always felt that she was weird. I'm eating out. Then you can take the video. If you have something to say, just say it now and don't waste my time. I responded to her directly. Can't I video chat with you if there's nothing else? I'm busy and don't have time. I didn't bother to pay attention to her and continued eating. I went to a nearby construction site, but the order was not successful. They just said they would consider it, and I knew there would be no follow-up. After finishing the meal, I prepared to go to the next store to ask. Ling Ling sent me a message, telling me that she had indirectly told Anthony's wife about Anthony's gathering in Jiangbei City. How's the effect? I asked Ling Ling curiously. I don't know the details, but I know Anthony must be having a hard time. Ling Ling said lightly, as if even if Anthony died, it had nothing to do with her. After a moment of silence, Ling Ling asked me how the deal was going. I told her the truth. No wonder Lin Lin keeps praising you in front of me. Ling Ling teased me. Sister Ling, you are too kind. I answered Ling Ling with a smile. You are really popular with women. Our Lin Lin wants to invite you to dinner. Are you going? Why do I feel a little jealousy in this? Sister Ling, do you think I should go? I kicked the ball back to her. Go ahead, why not? Why do I feel like there's something wrong with Ling Ling's tone? Is this an outburst of jealousy, or is it my illusion? I haven't chatted with Ling Ling like this for a long time. After chatting for a long time, Ling Ling said she had something to do and hung up the phone. After lunch, I went to a few more construction sites, but unfortunately found nothing. In the afternoon, Ling Ling sent me a personnel transfer letter. Anthony took the initiative to apply for transfer to the branch company, which is his wife's company. This is a done deal, and there is no way to change it. I felt very uncomfortable when I received this news. Anthony did something that brought disrepute upon the family in Jiangbei City, but was not fired. Instead, he was demoted to a branch company. What's even more disgusting is that he was allowed to take control of the branch company. Chapter 038, Welcoming Party. In this way, the wife will have more time to spend with Anthony in the future. Wouldn't it be better? Even have an affair in the office. Since it has already happened, there is no point in complaining here. We have to find a way to solve it. In fact, I'm still quite puzzled. It was already past 6 o'clock when I returned to the store. My sister-in-law had already brought the valves placed outside the store into the store and was preparing to get off work. Brother-in-law, have you eaten? I have eaten. Haven't you eaten yet? I asked my sister-in-law. Before I left in the morning, I told my sister-in-law to eat out and gave her this month's food expenses. Have eaten? After a busy day, Lin Lin wants to treat me to a meal, so I have to go. I've been too busy these days. Now I really want to lie on the bed, close my eyes, and have a good sleep. Originally, I didn't plan to go home and stayed in the store, but after thinking about it, I realized I had to go home. After all, I didn't change my clothes yesterday, so I still have to go home and change into clean clothes. my sister-in-law, and I returned home. As soon as we opened the door, the aroma of food hit us. The smell made me feel hungry again. Who else but my wife cooked these meals? I walked into the kitchen and saw my wife cooking. Today she was wearing a tight sweater, which perfectly showed the curves of her figure and the golden ratio when viewed from the side. If my sister-in-law also wears a tight sweater, will her figure be as beautiful? I glanced at my sister-in-law beside me in confusion. My sister-in-law also looked up at me, and our eyes met. I don't know if I felt guilty or something, but I quickly turned my head away. My sister-in-law had the same reaction as me. I felt weird and even a little panicked. After I came to my senses, I quietly observed my sister-in-law and found that her cheeks were red, which was quite attractive. Pooh! I complained to myself and almost slapped myself. How could I think in that direction? Husband, are you back? My wife turned and walked out of the kitchen and said to me with a smile on her face. She hadn't spoken to me like this for a long time, and I was really uncomfortable with it. Her attitude towards me has changed a lot since she had a quarrel with Anthony yesterday. Maybe I'm just a spare tire in her heart. I answered casually with a self-deprecating remark. The sister-in-law helped her sister bring out the food. Brother-in-law, would you like to eat some together? I've had enough outside. Eat some more. I made you a bowl of bullwhip soup. My wife suddenly said something that left me confused. She actually made bullwhip soup for me. What's the purpose? To nourish my body? Why did you suddenly buy bullwhips to make soup? I couldn't help but think of the words DeLange drank the medicine. You've been overworked lately, so I just want to replenish your body. I could hear a hint of concern in her voice. In the 7 years we've been married, she has never taken the initiative to care about me. What happened in the past 2 days? He deceived by Anthony? He discovered my goodness, came back to me, and felt guilty, so he treated me even better? Oh! I responded indifferently. Once you are unfaithful, you will never be trusted again. Until now, I have no real evidence that she was with Anthony, and sometimes I feel like a failure. It's been so long since I discovered it, but I still have no evidence. I don't even want to blame myself. Seeing me talking to my wife, my sister-in-law lowered her head and ate quickly. After only a few bites, she said she was full and went back to the room. Hubby, do you think Shinue is acting strange today? How come she's full after only taking a few bites of the meal? How should I know? I really don't know. Women's hearts are as unpredictable as the sea. I'll go ask later. As she said that, she walked into the kitchen and served me a bowl of bullwhip soup and placed it in front of me. Come on, husband, have some soup. Before I drank it, my wife took a sip to test the taste. I took the bowl of bullwhip soup and drank it. It tasted really good. It had a few Chinese medicinal herbs added to it, so it had a bit of the flavor of Chinese medicine. After I finished my soup, my wife's cell phone suddenly rang. She picked up her phone, checked the caller ID, and walked to the front balcony to answer it. I followed her, wanting to hear who she was talking to and what she was talking about. I only heard my wife say 2 sentences. One was okay, and the other was I'll be there soon. What are you doing? Honey, our branch is going to have a new leader, and some of our company's senior executives are going to welcome the new leader. I at you and percent. 10 million draft horses galloped past my head. Isn't the person coming Anthony? Welcoming party? Haha, I think it's the send-off X. Chapter 039 in groups. Oh, then go ahead. I held back my anger and pretended I knew nothing. You don't want me to go? She looked at me with a hint of helplessness in her eyes. Honey, I can't offend the new leader. Can I? Your feet are on your body. Can I stop you if you want to go? I asked my wife in return. If you don't want me to go, then I won't go. Why are you so fierce? She looked at me pretending to be very aggrieved and angry. Then he turned and walked into the room. At worst, I won't go to work. I'll just stay at home and be Mrs. Huang. Her dissatisfied voice came from the room again. Is Mrs. Huang still worthy of him? After a while, she came out of the room again, carrying a bag in her hand. It seems that she is going to welcome Anthony. Anthony recently. Should I go over quietly and watch the show? If you're worried, just come with me. My wife pouted and said to me, Can't you understand me? It's not easy for me to work at Mariah Company. I don't want to lose this job easily. What was this process? She was actually going to take me there to welcome Anthony? Isn't she worried that I'll find out about her relationship with Anthony? Will you come with me? If not, I'll go there by myself. After saying that, she put on her coat and picked up her favorite high heels and put them on. When she put on these high heels, her whole temperament reached a new level, especially her long and thin legs, which gave people an extraordinary sense of beauty. Let's go, I responded casually, while stealing a glance into her eyes. There was a little bit of disappointment on her face. I guess she must have thought that I would not go with her. She never expected that I would go with her, so she felt disappointed. Are you sure you want to go? My wife looked at me and asked me again, then immediately said, You are not an employee of our company. Wouldn't it be too embarrassing to go there like this? What? Didn't you just ask me to go with you? Now you regret it. I asked her in the same way. I'm worried that you'll be embarrassed. If you insist on going, then just go. She walked towards the door, obviously unhappy. I followed closely behind him, and as we went downstairs, I asked, Are you driving or am I driving? Let's take a taxi. You might have to drink later. Why don't you stop drinking and drive later? After that, she gave me her car keys. I didn't act pretentious and took her car keys. Where are you going to welcome your leader? Shintian Club. My colleague has already booked a private room there. Shintian Club is the most famous entertainment nightclub in Jiangdong City, and it has everything. There are places for people to have fun, places for people to book rooms, and even various services such as sauna and massage. It has everything, and it is a great place to live a life of intoxication and pleasure. After driving for 10 minutes, my wife and I were already outside the Shintian Club. The flashing advertising lights were blinding. There were many people standing outside the Shintian Entertainment Department. They were all young and beautiful women, as well as some handsome young men. My wife and I walked towards the gate of the Shintian Club. Before we reached the gate, many men's eyes fell on my wife. Several men even looked at me with jealousy because the wife next to me was so beautiful. Lu Yanfeng had been waiting at the door for a long time. She was wearing a short skirt and a low-cut dress today, and her face was heavily made up. In addition to Lu Yanfeng, there are several other more beautiful women. Because my wife's company sells cosmetics, these people are basically all women. After a careful look, I found that there was no other man in this group except me. If there was another man, it would probably be Anthony. I counted and there were 10 people in total, and Anthony had not arrived yet. Who is this Jessica? A pretty woman in a blue dress came over and asked with a smile. This is my husband. She gave a brief introduction and didn't say much. I found that her colleagues were looking at me curiously. From their eyes, they seemed to be wondering why I came. Your husband is really handsome. The woman in the blue dress teased. Thank you. Thank you. I answered with a smile. I think my appearance and figure are okay. I do have some confidence in this. A few minutes later, my wife, her colleagues, and I walked into the Shintian Club. The private room they opened was number 586. The waiter took us into the private room, which was very spacious. There is everything available for drinking and singing, and besides these there is also a curtain on the balcony. I walked over there, opened the curtains, and took a look. There is a bed behind the curtain, which may be for people to rest. The bathroom is spacious and even has a separate area for showering. Looking more closely, I saw something like Durex placed on a cabinet in the bathroom. What kind of club is this? Is it possible to play like this? Originally, I thought there were only 10 women and 2 men, Anthony and I. But not long after, another man came. This man was the husband of my wife's colleague. Maybe because she saw me coming, my wife's colleague asked her husband to come over too. Chapter 040 Respect for Leadership. The 12 of us waited in the box for a long time, and then Anthony arrived. He came alone. As soon as he walked into the box, his eyes fell on me first. He stared at me and quickly turned his gaze to his wife beside me. I noticed my wife's expression. She didn't dare to look Anthony in the eye. Welcome, Mr. Wong. Congratulations, Mr. Wong. As soon as Anthony arrived, Lu Yanfeng was the first to rush to greet him. Several other women also congratulated Anthony. Anthony just smiled. He walked over and sat down directly next to his wife. I don't know if he did it intentionally or not. The current situation is that I sit on the left side of my wife, and Anthony sits on the right side of my wife. Anthony seemed unhappy that I was here. When I was here, he was well-behaved and didn't secretly touch his wife. As soon as Anthony sat down, his wife didn't think it was wrong, but instead acted as if it was a matter of course. After Anthony arrived, the waiter started serving the dishes. There were all kinds of delicacies in the nightclub. The waiters brought the cold dishes, followed by steamed lobster, king crab, and many other expensive dishes. There is also a bottle of high-end foreign liquor, which costs about 50,000 yuan. Who is this? Anthony pretended not to know me and came up to his wife and asked. My husband, Johnson. I didn't answer, but my wife responded to him more actively than I did. So it's Johnson who heard that you work as a clerk in a small plumbing shop? Anthony's voice was quite loud, as if he was afraid that others didn't know that I worked as a clerk in a plumbing shop. I could see that he was laughing at me. If he knew that I had intercepted his order in Jiangbei City and that I was the one who reported him for gang rioting, he probably wouldn't say that. His mouth is on his body. Let him say whatever he wants. Well, yes. I'm running a plumbing shop now. I answered politely and generously. Then I wish your business prospers. Anthony deliberately emphasized the word prosperous, sounding sarcastic. Thank you for your good words. I confronted him directly. My wife was sitting between him and me, and she should have been able to feel the tension between them. Wife, sit here. I pulled my wife to the other side, closer to her other colleagues, and I sat directly next to Anthony. Anthony frowned. He wanted to say something, but didn't open his mouth, making the atmosphere quite awkward. Anthony just gave a look to Lu Yinfeng beside him, and Lu Yinfeng immediately understood and poured 2 glasses of foreign wine from the table. Generally, foreign liquor needs to be drunk with drinks, but Lu Yinfeng poured pure foreign liquor without drinks. The alcohol content of this kind of liquor is very high, and it is very easy to get drunk if you drink it without drinks. Come on, Johnson. I'll toast you a glass. Lu Yinfeng came over with a glass of pure foreign liquor and placed it in front of me. I'm not afraid of drinking, but they want to get me drunk. How can I let them succeed? Wait, everyone is going to come to welcome Mr. Wang tonight. You don't toast Mr. Wang first, but toast me first. This is too disrespectful to Mr. Wang. I said with a smile on my face, not panicking at all. Lu Yinfeng frowned slightly, thought for a while, and then she smiled bitterly. Turning around, she poured another glass of foreign wine. I saw Lu Yinfeng was going to add a drink to the wine. Mr. Wang is such a heavy drinker. Do you still need more drinks? Are you looking down on Mr. Wang? I questioned him directly. While Lu Yinfeng was pausing, I gently lifted the wine bottle and filled the glass in an instant. Anthony looked unhappy, but there was nothing he could do. Mr. Wang, I'll toast you. Lu Yinfeng could only toast helplessly. I knew that after Lu Yinfeng finished drinking, she would pour another full glass for me to drink. Anthony can only drink it. Of course, they all drank half a glass. This kind of foreign liquor without any drinks has a strong aftertaste. After Lu Yinfeng was the first to toast, the other dozen or so people came over to toast Anthony for fear of offending him. I was sitting there eating, and the husband of another colleague of my wife came over to toast Anthony. They all drank a lot, and finally they finished toasting. Anthony returned the wine so that there was not a drop left in the glass in front of him. He drank less. My wife and I were the only ones in the room who didn't toast Anthony. My wife even whispered in my ear, "Honey, what are you doing?" "Nothing. I'm hungry, so I'll eat something." Anthony just now. Many people said a lot of flattering words to Anthony. Chapter 041 Heartfelt. After we finished drinking, someone asked me and my wife to order a song. I ordered Dear Lover. When the music started, Anthony, who was sitting next to me, couldn't help but frown. Let my love be with you forever. My wife is not only beautiful, but she also sings very well. As soon as he sang a line, everyone in the room applauded, except Anthony, who just sat there with a straight face. Do you feel that I am worried about you? Only when we look at each other do we realize what fate is. Are you also waiting for a close lover? Keep your love in my heart forever. The long road has an unchanging heart. When the wind blows, let you feel what warmth is. The most precious thing in life is to have a close lover. No matter now or later, or in the distant future. Let's protect each other's love today, no matter if the wind and rain never come again. Although I am not very good at singing, my wife's wonderful music has brought out all my singing potential. Okay, give me a kiss. Give me a kiss. I don't know who is making the fuss, but the voices are getting louder and louder. And now Anthony's face has turned the color of liver. My wife's face didn't look very good, but she still forced a smile. Seeing this, I held my wife's head and kissed her. The applause became more and more enthusiastic, and the atmosphere was extremely high. It seemed as if my wife and I were the protagonists of the evening, and Anthony was just a supporting role. Seeing Anthony so unhappy, I was so happy. No matter what, I had to discuss them. Tell Anthony that even if you are with Jessica, so what? She still has to lie on my bed at night. Even if you are together, you can only do it secretly. I can show my love to her openly. When I get divorced one day, I will dig out these things and give them to you. I will disgust you to death. Anthony was disgusted by me. He was really disgusted by me. He drank glass of wine after glass with an unhappy look on his face. From his actions, we can see that he was very dissatisfied. He wanted to get angry but couldn't, so he just drank alone. Time passed quickly. During this time, this woman Lu Yinfeng always asked me to drink with her. She asked me to do this at least 10 times. I was not willing to drink with her, but she never stopped. Everyone was drinking, so I just started drinking too. Come, let's have a drink. I had just finished a drink when another woman came over and wanted to drink with me. This is obviously a round-robin game, and it must have been planned by Anthony to get me drunk. You took advantage of me being drunk and unconscious and played with my wife around me? If I really can't drink anymore, I will refuse appropriately. In the end, I really couldn't drink anymore, so I just sat on the chair and didn't drink. Hubby, don't drink so much. Although the music in the box was loud, I could still hear what my wife said to me. She also said that drinking too much is bad for the body. You still care about me? I sneered inwardly. Seeing that I had almost finished drinking, Anthony said to me, Johnson, we both haven't finished yet. Let's drink this one. Anthony raised his glass to drink with me. I didn't want to give him this face, and even thought about turning against him on the spot. After a while, I calmed down, and I drank the glass of wine with him. I pretended to be drunk and collapsed on the sofa. Mr. Wong, I really can't drink anymore. I might vomit if I drink more. That won't do. We haven't even had a drink yet. Let's have a drink. Don't give me face, brother. It was obvious that a group of people were trying to take turns to attack me. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that. Good. I was thinking about pretending to be drunk and seeing what was going on between my wife and Anthony. I drank the wine without saying a word, and Anthony drank it too. I pretended to vomit and ran to the bathroom. I closed the toilet door and took a rest inside. After urinating, I walked out of the toilet. When I came out, my wife and Anthony were no longer in the box. I was in the bathroom for less than 5 minutes. And when I came out, my wife and Anthony were gone. My wife and Anthony go. Did they go out? I opened the curtains to see if my wife was inside, but there was no one there. I walked up to Lu Yinfeng and grabbed her. Where's my wife? Isn't he still here? Lu Yinfeng was also drunk, and she didn't know which way was which as she collapsed on me. I quickly supported her. She was really flexible. This made me feel itchy, so I quickly sent Lu Yinfeng to the sofa. She looked extremely miserable lying on the sofa. Ran out with Anthony while I was in the bathroom. There weren't many people left in the box, but they were still singing, and the man just now came over and wanted to drink with me. I'm in no mood to drink with him. Maybe his wife is out there with Anthony. When I encounter something like this, I really can't remain calm. Without caring about anything else, I walked out of the box. There is no public toilet here. Where else can they have sex except in the car? Standing in the corridor, it seemed as if the whole world had become quiet. I picked up my phone and called my wife. The call went through, but my wife didn't answer. I looked at the time and found that my wife and Anthony had been out for more than 10 minutes and had not returned yet. Just as I was about to go to the garage to look for it, my wife was walking towards me, and she staggered as she came. I strode over in a rage and almost slapped her in the face. While I was in the bathroom, she actually left the box with Anthony. Since she was wearing a sweater, it was impossible to tell if there was anything unusual about her. Hubby, why are you here? My wife looked at me curiously and then said, Mr. Wong left first. Should we continue singing 2 more songs before leaving or go home? What were you doing out with Anthony for so long? He knew I knew it, but he kept asking. Maybe it was because of the alcohol, maybe it was because of the 7 years of relationship, or maybe I felt that something that belonged to me was taken away by someone else, and I felt extremely unhappy. Ms. Wong said she was going home. So what if I came out to see her off? Are you doubting me? The wife's eyes instantly turned red. Johnson, do you still have a conscience? My wife scolded me. I'm sincere to you, but you doubt me? Chapter 042, A Trace of Sadness. I laughed coldly in my heart. She was so sincere to me? How could she say such a thing? I was just seeing Mr. Wong off, and you actually suspected me. As she said this, she burst into tears with a sore nose. I was about to ask her if she knew the truth in her heart, but I didn't say that because I had no evidence that she was with Anthony so far. The last time I followed her to the hotel entrance, she suddenly had a quarrel with Anthony, which made me very depressed. Let's go home. There was a hint of disappointment in the wife's eyes, but more of loss. Let's go. I'll find a designated driver. I really want to know whether she did anything shameful when she sent Anthony out just now. I'll go talk to my colleagues. The wife opened the door of the box and walked in. About 5 or 6 minutes later, the wife came out, and she stumbled and almost fell when she came out. Husband, you're home now. Why are you still standing here? Seeing me standing there blankly, my wife frowned, and her pearly teeth seemed to be biting her lower lip, which made me imagine a lot. The designated driver had arrived, and my wife and I sat in the back of the car. My wife didn't drink much, and she sat in the back seat with a confused look on her face, and I didn't know what she was thinking about. Hubby, if I ask you to sell the house to pay for my brother's medical treatment, will you be angry? I don't know why, but my wife suddenly brought up this unpleasant thing. Of course I'm angry. Your brother has his own house, and he won't sell it. Why should we sell our house to pay for his medical treatment? I said to her, feeling very uncomfortable. I know that, but my wife seemed to want to say something, but hesitated. She seemed to want to tell me something, but after hesitating, she didn't say anything. What's the matter? It's nothing. I told you not to drink so much, but you insisted on drinking. There was a look of blame in my wife's eyes. I didn't expect that she cared about me like before. This is in stark contrast to what she has been doing recently, which makes me think that she might have been deceived by Anthony, and that is why she wants to come back to me. But why did he send Anthony back at night? She and Anthony been doing out there for so long? After a while, the driver took us back home, and I asked him to park the car in the garage. Before leaving, the designated driver secretly glanced at my wife, who was standing next to me. It might be because my wife was too beautiful and easily attracted the attention of other men. When she got home, the wife let down her tied hair and shook it gently. She changed into slippers and went back to the room to take out her pajamas. It was already early morning. My sister-in-law went to bed early, and I sat in the living room drinking boiled water. My wife couldn't wait to go into the bathroom to take a shower. It seemed that she had taken a shower when she went out, and now she is taking a shower again when she comes back. This made me even more suspicious, and anger rose in my heart. I drank up the boiled water on the table in one gulp. I don't know when my sister-in-law came out of the room. Her eyes were hazy. She rubbed her eyes with her slender right hand, walked to the table, picked up a glass of water, and was about to drink it. When she saw me sitting on the sofa, she screamed in fright, and the water in her hand fell on her. The bowl of water wet my sister-in-law's clothes, outlining her perfect figure. Because she was only wearing a thin nightgown, the water soaked the nightgown, and everything was exposed. At this moment, I really want to recite a poem, but I am not educated, so I can only say fuck. The sister-in-law seemed to realize something, and quickly turned around and ran back to her room. Before closing the door, she secretly poked her head out and said, "Brother-in-law, why are you still awake? Just got back." "Oh, what about my sister?" "Your sister is taking a shower," I said lightly, then went back to the room and lay directly on the bed. About half an hour later, my wife came out of the bathroom. "Taking a bath? Why does it take so long?" I muttered to myself and walked out of the room to go to the toilet. Since Anthony has gone to work at my wife's company, I will most likely be cuckolded every day. How can I be in a good mood? "Honey, why aren't you sleeping yet?" "Yes." I don't know why, but whenever I close my eyes, I'll think of the scene where my wife was bullied by Anthony, and she was the type who was half-hearted. This made me so angry that I wanted to beat my wife. "Honey, you drank so much alcohol. I'll go get you some bull-whip soup." My wife turned and walked out of the room to make me some bull-whip soup. About 10 minutes later, she brought in the bull-whip soup. I just warmed it up, drink it while it's hot. My wife insisted that I drink bull-whip soup. She took a sip and then looked at me with her beautiful eyes. But I saw a hint of sadness in her beautiful eyes. Chapter 043 Strange Courier. I don't want to drink. I'll go to bed early. I've brought it all to you. You can replenish your body. Her eyes were red and tears were about to flow out of her beautiful eyes, giving people a very pitiful and aggrieved feeling, making people want to pity her. So I drank the bowl of bullwhip soup she handed me. The next morning, my wife lay in my arms with a happy smile on her face. I noticed that the look in her eyes when she looked at me had become much gentler, but I don't know if it was an illusion. When we got up, my sister-in-law had already prepared breakfast. I saw that she had dark circles under her eyes. Although it was not very serious, it was certain that she did not sleep well last night. Maybe we made too much noise last night and disturbed her rest. "Sister, brother-in-law has had breakfast." My sister-in-law yawned, and I saw that she was almost falling asleep. The wife seemed to notice that her sister-in-law didn't sleep well last night. She didn't know what was wrong with her brain and asked, "Shinue, didn't you sleep well last night?" The sister-in-law hurriedly shook her head and said, "No. After breakfast, we left home separately. My wife went to work at the company, and my sister-in-law and I returned to the store. My sister-in-law was sitting in the car, looking listless and yawning constantly. After more than 10 minutes, we finally arrived at the store. After signing the contract with Lin today, we can start supplying the first batch of goods. After completing this construction site, I will also get a considerable share of the profits." My sister-in-law was tidying up the valves in the shop, and I helped move the valves out and place them at the door of the shop. While I was doing all this, my cell phone rang. The courier called me and said I had a delivery. I remember I haven't bought anything online for a long time, so how come there is express delivery? Could this be a trap? After a while, the courier arrived at the door of my store with a package in his hand. "Please sign for your delivery." "What is this?" I took a step back and looked at the delivery guy vigilantly. How would I know? It could be clothes or some personal belongings or something like that. The courier said this to me, and then he said impatiently, "This is not a cash on delivery package. Please sign for it quickly. I'm in a hurry." Many people have received cash on delivery express deliveries, some of which were empty packages worth more than a dozen yuan. There are often groups of people who send this kind of express delivery. They can earn more than 10 yuan for each one. If the quantity is large, it can be a terrifying fortune. Because the amount is small, basically no one calls the police. I took the package and shook it gently. The things inside were not heavy, but rather light. Driven by curiosity, I opened the package. When the package was opened, there was a set of thin women's clothing, several photos, and even a USB flash drive. These photos made me tremble all over. My heart beat faster, and a feeling of anger arose in my heart. These photos are artistic photos of my wife, wearing a swimsuit, and she also posed in various poses. I clenched my fists tightly, wondering who sent this package and why the other party had so many beautiful photos of my wife. Who sent this? I looked at the shipping address on the box, but it didn't clearly state where the address was. Who sent me these photos? What is his purpose in giving them to me? Thinking back to what happened to my wife recently and looking at these photos, I felt very annoyed. There is also a USB drive here. Could it be that there is something about my wife in this USB drive? Brother-in-law, I'm going to go out and buy some things. I'll be back later. My sister-in-law said to me after she had cleaned up the valve. After hearing the sound, I quickly put the photos in my hand into my pocket. Well, go ahead. My sister-in-law came up to me and noticed the thin clothes. She looked at me with a puzzled look on her face. Brother-in-law, what is this? A courier just delivered it to me. I didn't buy it. I said innocently. My sister-in-law looked at me as if she believed it or not, but she didn't ask any more questions. She walked towards the supermarket across the street. I took the USB drive and walked to the computer in a hurry. I quickly put the USB drive on the computer and opened the file on it. There was indeed an MP4 file inside, and the cover of the file was a woman. To be precise, it was an indecent video, so disgusting that it made people want to vomit blood. Chapter 044, It's Not Real. The scenes in the video are too beautiful, I really can't bear to watch it. My wife was doing shameful things with a man. I rubbed my eyes and looked forward and felt that the whole world was green. Now I have the urge to kill someone. The man in the video is blurred, but the wife is not blurred. Carefully observe the scene with the wife and the man. This scene seems familiar. I seem to have seen it somewhere before. Hotel? Which hotel? Basically all hotels are pretty much the same. This bitch. I couldn't help but curse who filmed this video. One person was filming the video, and there was another person filming as well. How many people are needed? I was very upset, and I gritted my teeth for a long time without saying anything. As a man, who wants this to happen? Now I wanted to take a kitchen knife and kill these people. At this time, I didn't notice that my sister-in-law had walked behind me. She screamed after seeing the video. Her voice scared me so much that I quickly turned off the video and pulled out the USB drive. At this moment, the sister-in-law's face turned terribly red, and she was stunned where she was because she saw that the protagonist in the video was the elder sister who taught her to keep herself clean. Instantly, the sister-in-law's eyes turned red, and tears could not help but flow out. Brother-in-law, my sister would never do such a thing. You wouldn't do such a thing? The evidence is right here, and you still wouldn't do such a thing? Do you want me to play the video again for you? I gestured at the USB flash drive in my hand. No, I don't believe my sister would do such a thing. It must be fake. My sister-in-law said to me very firmly. It's fake. How can something like this be fake? I pointed at my sister-in-law's nose and cursed her, then said, I don't know how long I have been wearing this green hat. Brother-in-law, can we see the video? Technology is so advanced nowadays, some videos and pictures can be edited. My sister-in-law firmly believed that her sister was innocent and actually asked me to play the video for her. Okay, take a good look. I couldn't stand it any longer, so I opened the video in the USB drive. Since it was filmed by a third person, the whole video was very clear. I stared at the screen carefully. My sister-in-law stood behind me. She was trying to find the difference between the woman in the video and my wife. Her face turned red as she watched the video, and I could feel her rapid breathing. Brother-in-law, my sister's thighs are not that thick. Also, my sister was injured when she was a child and has a scar on her back. This woman obviously doesn't have that scar. I think someone deliberately used face-changing technology to replace my sister's portrait. I looked carefully and found that this woman's thighs were indeed thicker than my wife's, and there were no scars on her back. So this woman was not my wife? Is it true, as my sister-in-law said, that the heroine in this video is not my wife, but was made by someone with ulterior motives, who wants me to have a falling out with my wife and divorce her? Would the first person I think of be Anthony? Who wants me to get divorced the most right now is probably Anthony. Besides, the man in the video is tall and strong, which is totally inconsistent with Anthony's figure. My mood was like a roller coaster. After a careful check, I even pressed the pause button. After confirming that it was not my wife, I quickly turned off the video. Don't panic when encountering such a thing. The best way is to call the police. When I saw the face in the video just now, I was really impulsive. I turned to look at my sister-in-law. Her cheeks were terribly red. Brother-in-law, I'm going to wash my face. Being stared at by me like that, my sister-in-law ran away to the bathroom to wash her face. No matter what, you must call the police. In the end, I handed over all the photos and videos in the USB drive to the police and went to the police station to make a statement, which took me half a day. Husband, can you pick me up at the company in the evening? As soon as I came out of the police station, I saw the WeChat message my wife sent me. She never asked me to pick her up from work before, but today she suddenly asked me to pick her up from work. No matter how I think about it, I feel like this is not normal. Since she asked me to pick her up, I naturally went over. I'm considering whether to tell my wife about the express package I received today. I looked at the time, and it was still early, so I went to visit a few more construction sites. After much persuasion, the owner of a small construction site finally agreed to give a small portion of the orders to our store. I have gained something today, even though it is a small order, but even a small amount is still meat. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, it was time for my wife to get off work. She must have a reason for asking me to pick her up, so I drove to my wife's company and stopped right opposite her company. Didn't your wife drive over to work? I really didn't notice whether she drove over to work today. I waited opposite the passage where employees go home from get off work for about 10 minutes. My wife should have come out from get off work by now, but why hasn't she come out yet? After waiting for so long, I called her. Just as I made the call, my wife and Anthony walked out side by side. Anthony had a very obscene expression on his face. His hands were placed behind his back, and it was unclear whether he was taking advantage of his wife. I drove over to get a clear look. If Anthony dared to put his hands on his wife, I wouldn't mind having a fight with him. We can use this opportunity to spread the news that Anthony was sexually assaulting his female subordinates. Let's see how he can continue to work in this company. Soon I stopped my car in front of my wife. From my angle, Anthony did not make any sexual advances towards my wife. Maybe he learned from the last lesson and doesn't dare to do it again. Honey, why are you here? When she saw me, a smile appeared on my wife's face, and I could even see that her whole body relaxed. Anthony, who was standing next to his wife, instantly turned pale. My wife asked me to pick her up, but now she asked me why I was here. It was obvious that she was just pretending to be nice to Anthony. Judging from Anthony's facial expression, he definitely didn't want me to pick up his wife. It was very likely that he wanted to ask his wife out somewhere. It was difficult for my wife to refuse, so she sent me a message to pick her up. This is the only explanation. There is no other explanation. This gave me the illusion that Anthony had some leverage over my wife and was threatening her. I couldn't help but become alert, thinking that I would ask clearly when I got back. Do you remember that my sister-in-law and I went to the ward to visit my wife's brother, and Anthony just walked out of the ward, and then my mother-in-law begged me to sell the house? Does this have anything to do with selling the house? I really can't think of any connection, but what is certain is that Anthony went to my wife's brother's ward and wanted to send me to Jeonbei City and not let me stay in Jeongdong. Chapter 0:45. Where did it come from? I just happened to pass by here after delivering the goods. I saw you were getting off work, so I came to pick you up. I said to my wife cooperatively. My wife looked at me and frowned slightly. She seemed to realize something and turned back. Mr. Wong, let's talk about work tomorrow. I have to get off work. You go ahead. It can be seen that Anthony is in a very unhappy mood at this moment. The wife opened the car door without even looking at Anthony and sat in the passenger seat. I drove forward and saw through the rearview mirror that Anthony turned around and walked towards Liu Yinfeng, who had just got off work. When Liu Yinfeng saw Anthony, a smile instantly appeared on her face. What's going on? Didn't you ask me to pick you up? Why did you ask me that just now? I questioned my wife, who was sitting in the passenger seat while driving. Anthony keeps pestering me. I really have no choice but to ask you for help. The wife's words revealed her helplessness. I don't know if she was pretending. Last time she was about to go to the hotel with Anthony, I followed them. Why does he keep pestering you? Doesn't he know that you already have a husband? How would I know him? My wife said to me helplessly, and then added, Honey, how is the business in your plumbing shop? If it's not good, I suggest you change your job. It feels good to just start. Okay, come with me to the hospital later to see my brother and my mother. When I said this, I felt uncomfortable and always felt that my wife wanted me to sell the house. It's okay to look at them, but it's impossible for me to sell the house. I told my wife directly, don't worry, no one asked you to sell the house. After my persuasion, Xiaoxia is going to sell the house to pay for my brother's medical treatment. My wife said to me calmly. I felt a little relieved when she said that. Will Anthony keep harassing you? I asked again. I didn't harass him, but he kept asking me out for dinner alone and said he would give me a promotion and a raise. My wife deliberately said this to me. After a moment of silence, she continued, I don't want to have too much entanglement with him, but he always pesters me. I didn't respond to my wife. According to her, she and Anthony were just in a boss-subordinate relationship and there was no other relationship, right? Or maybe he was worried that I would find out, so he set up a maze for me. All the previous signs proved that her relationship with Anthony was special, but now it seems that she doesn't even know Anthony. We have to go to a hotel to get a room, and you still say this? The main thing is that she helped my sister-in-law to get a job, and later she asked for me to go to Jambay City. If you say that my wife has no relationship with Anthony, I really don't believe it. I know very well that there is no free lunch in this world. 1. Who would help you for no reason? Even if you are beautiful, people will help you for a purpose. It is impossible for them to help you again and again, right? After a while, I drove to the central hospital. Honey, I was so busy talking to you that I didn't notice you had this car. Where did you get this car? The wife asked me curiously, and then said, You didn't buy the car yourself without telling me, did you? She said, pulling her face down. Because the business of the store has improved, the company has provided me with a car. I didn't hide it either. Oh. My wife looked a little lost, and soon I followed her to her brother's ward. There was only one woman sitting on a chair in the ward. I had seen this woman several times. She was Xiaoxia, the wife of my wife's younger brother. From the outside, Xiaoxia looked very haggard. She doesn't seem like the type of woman who would refuse to sell her house to pay for her husband's medical treatment. You guys are here? Xiaoxia turned around and looked at me and my wife. Her eyes were red, and she had heavy dark circles. Well, take this money and buy some delicious food for Aji. The doctor said he will get better. Don't worry about the money. It seemed that the money his wife gave to Xiaoxia was at least 50,000 yuan. She gave it to me, and I have no objection. I'm just curious. Her salary is not very high, and she used to live paycheck to paycheck every month. Where does she get so much money? Did he borrow it from Anthony? My wife and Xiaoxia were talking for a long time here, and I was too embarrassed to ask. The two of them sat there until after 8 in the afternoon. I don't know how long I walked back and forth in the ward, and my wife and the others were still chatting. He couldn't stand it any longer and urged his wife to go home quickly. She stood up, said something to Xiaoxia, then turned and left the ward. When he left the ward, his wife cried. She cried very hard. The doctor said that my brother's hope of recovery is very slim, and his condition is likely to continue to worsen. When she said this, she burst into tears and her clothes were soaked with tears. Chapter 46, Sister and Brother Love. She couldn't help but threw herself into my arms and cried. I felt my chest was wet. Those were her tears. Wow, why is my brother so unlucky? He hasn't done anything bad in his life, so why did he get this disease? She cried even more miserably. Life and death are determined by fate. I patted her back gently and said to her, Everyone has their own destiny. How you will live your life may have already been predetermined. But my brother is still so young. How could... Come on, let's go home. I took out a tissue from my pocket and asked my wife to wipe her tears. I was not in a good mood. Along the way, I thought about Li Zi's painful appearance. His wife had to watch such a young brother dying, but was powerless to do anything. That feeling of helplessness was really suffocating. My wife cried all the way in the car and told me stories about her and her brother's childhood. She said that when she was a child and was bullied in school, her brother would always appear in front of her to protect her. When I was in school, the security in our school was not very good. There were always some young people from society wandering around outside the school. One time, I was surrounded by a few young people on my way home from school. They tore my clothes and wanted to beat me up. After choking up, she continued, Do you know how panicked and scared I was at that time? I felt helpless. I was afraid that I would be insulted by that group of young people. I was afraid that As she spoke, the wife burst into tears. My younger brother was walking home from school, and he saw me being bullied by some young men from society. He was alone at the time, so he picked up a brick and rushed into the crowd to fight with the youths. In the end, my brother was beaten severely. After he was cured and discharged from the hospital, he was left with hidden injuries and couldn't do any physical work at all. I didn't expect that he would be so unlucky to get this disease. If it weren't for her illness, I really wouldn't have known that my wife had such a past. No wonder she asked me to sell the house to pay for her brother's medical treatment. Did I blame her wrongly before? Was it not Xiaoxia who didn't want to sell the house? Was it her brother who didn't allow her to sell it? Are you afraid that it will make Li Ji unhappy and affect his treatment? So you asked me to sell the house to pay for his treatment? No matter what the reason, first, she didn't tell me, and second, if this is true, I would not sell the house to pay for Li Ji's treatment, but I would help him raise money for his treatment. He had a really bad fate. The wife choked up and said, if I could go back in time, I would never let my brother get this disease. There are no ifs, and times cannot be reversed. Where did you get the money you just gave to your brother? No matter what, the matter between his wife and Anthony must be investigated thoroughly. He cannot ignore it just because of this incident. I borrowed it from a colleague. You won't mind, right? My wife wiped away her tears and looked at me and asked. I have no objection. I still have 20,000 yuan left. I'll give it to your brother later. There are only more than 20,000 yuan left in my bank card. This is all I can do. Maybe I'm too soft-hearted. Or maybe it's because we've been together for 7 years, so I'll just help as much as I can. Even if Li Ji eventually died, the money could be given to the orphans and widows, which would be a kind of help to them. I parked the car on the side of the road and directly transferred the only 20,000 yuan left in my bank card to my wife. Give it to your brother. Thank you, husband. Okay, let's go home. I was in a heavy mood. I had to get things clear about the express package I received today. There's something I want to ask you. What's up? Someone sent me your package today, which contained your indecent photos and videos. I stared at my wife beside me, wanting to see her reaction. She panicked for a moment, frowned, and turned to look at me. What obscene video? Indecent photos? Where are they? Before going to the police station to report the case today, I made a copy of the indecent photos and videos. I opened my phone and showed her the obscene photos. The wife held the phone and hurriedly explained, Honey, this is not me. Chapter 047 Believe in Me. I didn't say anything, just stared at her for a few seconds. Seeing that I didn't say anything, my wife quickly explained, Honey, this really isn't me. You have to believe me. My wife was afraid that I wouldn't believe her, so she explained to me anxiously. Do you know who sent you the package? My wife looked at me puzzled. She bit her lip and said, Let's call the police. Hubby, why don't you say anything? Don't you believe me? Seeing that I didn't say anything, my wife asked me anxiously again. I believe you. I also want to know who sent this to me. As soon as I spoke, my wife relaxed. She was afraid that I would mistakenly think that the heroine in the video was her. How unbearable is this? No woman would want her husband to see a video of her having an affair with another man, and wives are no exception. I've called the police. Have you offended anyone recently? I asked my wife. No. The wife shook her head and replied. She was very angry at this time. The video and photos made her feel ashamed and angry. Who is so wicked? What is his purpose in doing this? Giving me this kind of video is nothing more than destroying the relationship between me and my wife and making me divorce her. How can I let them succeed? Since this person was able to send this package to me, he must have some understanding of me. He wants to destroy the relationship between me and my wife and make us divorce, but I refuse to divorce. I want to show off my love to him and make him sick to death. Go home first. The police will investigate this matter. The wife just hummed. She was sitting in the passenger seat, frowning, and no one knew what she was thinking. Suddenly her cell phone rang. After looking at the caller ID, her expression flashed a moment of panic, but soon returned to normal. If you didn't pay attention, you would definitely not be able to catch her panic. Who called you? Why didn't you answer? An agent who buys and sells real estate. Real estate agent? Before, I wanted to sell our house to pay for my brother's medical treatment, so I went to find an agent. Later, you disagreed and nothing happened. Later, this agent kept calling me, which was really annoying. I stopped answering his calls. Oh! Before we knew it, we had returned home, and my sister-in-law was sitting on the sofa in her pajamas watching TV. As soon as I entered the room, her eyes met mine. She turned her head away, a little embarrassedly. In fact, I felt quite embarrassed in my heart as well. After all, I watched that video with her in the morning. To be honest, I have never watched that kind of video with a woman, and my sister-in-law is the first one. I was so angry at the time that I didn't notice these details. It was not until I got home that night that I realized how embarrassing it was. Sister, brother-in-law, have you eaten? Have eaten? My wife and I answered in unison. Just a moment after returning home, my wife went back to the room to get her pajamas and put her cell phone on the bedside table to charge. Less than 3 minutes after the wife entered the bathroom, her phone rang, and the name Mr. Wong appeared on the caller ID. Who else is Mr. Wong in my wife's address book besides Anthony? It's already 9 o'clock. Why is Anthony calling his wife? After hesitating for a moment, I answered the call. All I heard from the other end of the line was these words that made me feel very sick. Honey, are you still mad at me? This makes me sick. Mr. Wong, are you sure you didn't call the wrong number? I calmed down and retorted. Actually, I was quite angry in my heart. Is it really true that there is nothing between my wife and Anthony? Oh, sorry, I dialed the wrong number. Anthony apologized and hung up the phone. I put my phone down, and I wasn't in a good mood at all. When a phone call comes, the wife calls him dear. Does she really have nothing to do with Anthony? This question is worth pondering. Time passed by, and my wife came out of the bathroom. I handed her the phone. Anthony just called you and called you dear. Ah, your husband is ill. Ignore him. The wife quickly said, There's nothing wrong between him and me. Why are you so angry? How can I not be angry? A man called my wife and called her dear. Just imagine how I felt inside. Husband, it's not worth it for you to be angry about this. Go to bed early. My wife came over, stood in front of me, and said to me softly, Chapter 048, this is a code word. Well, go to bed early. I replied to my wife, went back to the room early, and lay down looking at the place where I installed the camera. I checked the surveillance video from time to time, and I haven't found anything else in these days. It just captured the scene of the battle between my wife and I. Thinking back to the abnormalities my wife had shown before, I wondered if I was wrong or if my wife had really betrayed me. Honey, are you still mad at me? This sentence echoed clearly in my mind. I followed my wife and Anthony to the hotel entrance. My wife had an argument with Anthony and left him angrily in a taxi. Have a fight with Anthony recently? Did she buy me bullwhip soup to get back at Anthony? Did she show off her affection to me to disgust Anthony? Am I just being used? Sometimes I think that my thoughts are really ridiculous. I actually think in that direction and think of myself as the third party. Just as I was thinking about this, my wife came in from outside. She was wearing a suspender nightgown and sitting on the edge of the bed looking at her cell phone, seemingly chatting with someone. I hugged her waist from behind and kissed her cheek gently. Actually, my purpose was to see who she was talking to. From the corner of my eye, I saw that she was chatting with Lu Yinfeng. The conversation between the two women was normal, just talking about some work matters, nothing special. There is one sentence that I can't figure out. There is rain and smoke on Zitai Mountain. I didn't understand what these few words meant. I wrote down these words and looked them up on Baidu, but I couldn't find out what they meant. Can this woman Lu Yinfeng also write poetry? The impression I have is that her flesh is so smelly that it's covered in flies. Lu Yinfeng's writing is quite good. Can she recite a poem for you? How would I know what's wrong with her? My wife answered me normally. She didn't feel panicked because I asked this. I saw a news report 2 days ago about some people gathering together to gamble and setting secret codes, such as the King of Heaven covers the earth, the Tiger of Earth, and the pagoda suppresses the river monster. Could that sentence just now be a secret signal between my wife and Lu Yinfeng? The next scene made my blood boil. Lu Yinfeng actually sent a shameful photo of herself to my wife. I just took a look at it and was pushed back by my wife. Does Lu Yinfeng have a problem with her sexual orientation? Why would she send such a picture to her wife? I just saw them talking about clothes, and then Lu Yinfeng sent a photo of herself wearing those thin clothes, and then she said, if I show my boyfriend this, will he like it? Damn! Women also talk about this topic. Shameless. The wife muttered something and deleted the photo, then responded to Lu Yinfeng, saying that she was crazy and told her not to send such photos to her again. Lu Yinfeng just sent an aggrieved expression, and then there was no further response. The wife turned off her cell phone, lay on the bed, and gently massaged her temples, looking very tired. I lay in bed, tossing and turning. My wife has fallen asleep. Thinking carefully about the line of poetry I just read, I really don't understand what it means, but there is one detail that is very important. The photo of Lu Yinfeng wearing the thin clothes was not taken by herself, but by someone else. To be precise, it was not Lu Yinfeng who was chatting with his wife, but someone else? Was this person a man? What kind of mentality would a man have when he sent a photo of Lu Yinfeng to his wife? The wife also called him shameless? If I'm guessing correctly, Anthony is probably with Liu Yanfeng now. Liu Yanfeng was also one of the participants in the last gang riot, so there was nothing strange about Anthony being with Liu Yanfeng. There is rain and smoke on Mount Zitai. It is really brain-burning to decipher this sentence. That night, I tossed and turned, and after lying there for about 10 minutes, my wife fell asleep. I really couldn't sleep, so I went to the living room to get some water to drink. My sister-in-law was still sitting on the sofa watching TV series. Xinyue, you haven't slept yet? My sister-in-law is a TV drama fanatic. Every time she sees a TV series, she will stay up very late before going to bed. Because the screen of her mobile phone is too small, or she is used to watching it on TV, so she always watches TV on the sofa in the living room. Yes, the sister-in-law in her pajamas stretched, yawned slightly, raised the cup of water in her hand, took a sip of water, and continued to stare at TV. My sister-in-law just graduated from college. She may know the meaning of the poem that Liu Yanfeng sent to my wife. I will ask her whether she understands it or not. Xinyue, there's a poem that you can help me interpret? I jumped onto the sofa and sat next to my sister-in-law. A faint fragrance came towards me, which made me feel more energetic. What poem do you want to tell me? There is rain and smoke on Zitai Mountain. The sister-in-law read it again and frowned. Brother-in-law, this is not a poem. It's just a phrase, like a code, similar to the code of the sky, king covering the earth tiger, and the pagoda suppressing the river monster. Why do you suddenly ask this? Chapter 049, Unintentional Disruption. My sister-in-law thinks this is a code word, so it should be a code word. What exactly is the code? Even the sister-in-law, who has watched so many TV dramas, couldn't figure it out. Brother-in-law, what does that mean? Now, my sister-in-law asked me curiously what I meant by that sentence just now. I don't know if she did it on purpose, but every time she went to get some water, her slender hand would touch my arm intentionally or unintentionally, which made me feel nervous. It happened once just now, and now it happens again. This is the second time. My sister-in-law seemed to realize that something was wrong, and quickly sat aside, keeping some distance from me. She probably didn't do it on purpose. Maybe she touched it accidentally when she was drinking water. It turned out that I was overthinking. I was really panicked after those two contacts just now, and felt like a guilty thief. She leaned to the side, and I quickly leaned to the other direction, and the atmosphere suddenly became a little awkward. Brother-in-law, I'm going to bed. You should get some rest too. I could clearly feel that my sister-in-law was a little flustered. In the past, she would have watched the TV series for a while longer, but now she wanted to go back to her room quickly. Well, good night. My sister-in-law got up and went back to her room, leaving me alone in the living room. I turned off the TV, and the whole house fell silent. I poured myself a glass of wine and took a sip, muttering to himself, there is rain and smoke on Mount Zitai. There is indeed a place called Zitai. Usually we think of it as mist and rain, so why did it become rain and mist? Isn't Yinyu's encounter? Is Yinyu going up the mountain too straight? Zitai is too far away from us, and this code word cannot possibly involve that place. Too straight, too straight. This name sounds familiar. I seem to have seen it somewhere. Close your eyes and think carefully. We have a very straight hotel here. Liu Yanfeng and his wife are meeting at the Taiji Hotel. The specific time is probably tomorrow, because I just saw the chat history between my wife and Liu Yanfeng. Liu Yanfeng asked my wife to accompany her to buy clothes, go shopping, and eat snacks after get off work tomorrow. It will be easy once you know the agreed location. Whether it was Liu Yanli who was chatting with his wife, or someone else will be revealed tomorrow. After drinking a bottle of wine, I looked at my phone. It was already early morning. I stood on the balcony and a cool breeze blew towards me, making me feel refreshed and my mind clear. I just want to show my love for my wife, and I just want to discuss them. A motorcycle sped past downstairs. It was so fast that I could vaguely see a woman sitting on the back. The woman seemed to be Anthony's daughter. When I wanted to look again, the motorcycle had gone far away. I went back to my room and lay on the bed. Because I had drunk quite a bit of wine, and it was already very late, I fell asleep after a while. I don't know how much time had passed before a scream woke me up. When I woke up, my wife's thighs were pressed on me. Her slender hands were holding me. She was sleeping soundly with a faint but happy smile on her face. She looks much better without makeup than with it. Her beautiful face looks even more beautiful and charming under the sunlight outside the window. I had an urge to hug her tightly and kiss her. Sister, brother-in-law, don't you guys have to go to work? You're almost late. Why don't you get up? At this time, my wife lying in my arms opened her beautiful hazy eyes. She looked at me, and I stared at her. It really made my heart beat. Even though I've been married to her for such a long time, I never get tired of looking at her. Her beauty almost suffocates me. Good morning, husband. The wife blinked her beautiful eyes, then got up, dressed, washed, and put on makeup. She was dressed very beautifully today. When I came to the dining table, I saw a Western breakfast on it. There was a sausage, 2 eggs, 2 slices of bread, and a glass of milk with a knife and fork on the plate, which made me salivate. My sister-in-law has never made this kind of breakfast before. Xinyue, can you cook Western food? I asked my sister-in-law while eating breakfast. Nonsense, I know a lot more. My sister-in-law said with great pride. My wife came out after putting on makeup, and she also sat down to eat breakfast. While eating, she suddenly said to me, Honey, I'm going to buy clothes with Lu Yinfeng tonight. Do you want to go? I thought my wife wouldn't tell me, but I didn't expect her to tell me and even ask me if I wanted to go with her. I was about to refuse, but my sister-in-law spoke before me. Sister, I also want to buy 2 pieces of clothes. Let's go together. Brother-in-law, if you are free, please help us carry the clothes. I was so upset that my sister-in-law was messing up the situation. I wanted to refuse my wife and secretly follow her to see what was going on. Now my sister-in-law has accidentally messed up the situation. If I have nothing to do in the evening, I'll go with you. If I'm busy, there's nothing I can do. For people in our job, we may invite clients to dinner or have social engagements at any time. I'll pick you up at the store on Xinyue night. Okay, sister, let's buy something for my sister-in-law. She's so pitiful. When talking about her brother, my wife's eyes became red again, and my sister-in-law was not much better. Chapter 050. Working overtime at night. After thinking for a moment, my wife drove her car to work, and I took my sister-in-law with red eyes to work in the store because we were very busy today because we had to deliver goods to Lin's construction site. As soon as I arrived at the store, I asked someone to go to the warehouse to move and deliver goods, while my sister-in-law cleaned the store and looked after it. When I got to the warehouse, I recalled the scene last night when Anthony's daughter passed by my house late at night. That motorcycle is a limited edition and very special. There is only one in the whole city, and these 2 motorcycles are owned by Triumph Nightclub Company. The limited edition motorcycle in the Triumph Nightclub was bought for display and will also be lent to VIP customers. Anthony's daughter is most likely a VIP of Triumph Nightclub, so she must go there often. A few years ago, the Triumph Nightclub was very famous in our Jiangdong. Later, due to a murder case, it gradually faded out of people's sight. After 2 years of rectification, it became active again. It is said that the Triumph Nightclub is very chaotic with all kinds of people there. There is a folk rumor that there was a pure and beautiful girl who went to that nightclub to play. Because she didn't want to play with those gangsters, her wine was drugged while she was dancing. Later, the girl became addicted and couldn't extricate herself. Later, she was played around by those gangsters, and her life was ruined. It is said that the girl was arrested for helping gangsters commit crimes, and those gangsters were also brought to justice. It's a pity that he was in his youth and looking forward to a beautiful life. But his life was ruined because he became addicted after being drugged in a nightclub. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, both trucks were loaded. It was already noon when I returned to the store. As soon as I arrived at the store, Lin called me, and I quickly answered the phone. Johnson, I'm sorry. I was delayed in inviting you to dinner because of something urgent at the company last time. Are you free tonight? Would you like to come over and have dinner with me? The customer is God. Lin took the initiative to invite me to dinner, so I naturally couldn't refuse. She told me last time that she didn't have time to come. Sister Lin, I should be the one treating you. I said to her with a smile. Please treat me next time. To thank you, I will introduce you to a client this time. The order is quite large, but whether you can win it depends on your ability. I am only responsible for introducing you. Lin said to me very seriously. Thank you, Sister Lin. Business basically relies on relationships and connections. With Lin's introduction, you are halfway to success. Let's meet at Taiji Restaurant tonight. Coincidentally, Lin decided to have dinner at Taiji Restaurant, which has the same owner as Taiji Hotel. Taiji Restaurant is the dining area of Taiji Hotel. The food there is very good and the business is extremely hot. Okay, I can't go shopping for clothes with my wife and others in the evening, so I can't go to Taiji Restaurant to have dinner with Lin. The important thing is that Lin wants to introduce a big client to me, and I naturally won't miss it. Brother-in-law, my sister just called and said she has to work overtime tonight and is not available, so she asked you to accompany me to buy clothes. This is what my sister-in-law said to me as soon as I hung up the phone. Ah, your sister has to work overtime tonight? Well, brother-in-law, are you free? If you are free, then please accompany me. If you are not free, then forget it. The sister-in-law said with a gloomy look in her eyes. I have an appointment with a client to have dinner tonight. I'll take you to buy it after get off work, and then I'll take you to meet the client later. Okay. Thank you, my good brother-in-law. My sister-in-law didn't forget to tease me, and a sweet smile appeared on her lost face. Sometimes her smile can easily give me an illusion. I quickly shook my head to throw away the dark thoughts in my mind. My wife told us that she was going to buy clothes. So why did she suddenly want to work overtime? In my opinion, it must be Anthony's doing. Chapter 051, The Pie in the Sky. I suddenly remember the time when I followed Anthony and his wife to the mall to have dinner, and the time when Anthony came out of the sex toy store outside the mall and bought a bottle of liquid potion. I felt inexplicably uneasy. It is really impossible to let Anthony continue to stay in the company where his wife works, or let his wife leave the company and find another job. The best option is to get Anthony out, and I have to find a way to do that. After I walked out the door, I called Ling Ling. I wanted to find out about Anthony's latest situation. I don't work at Mariah Company, and I don't know much about Anthony's situation. Sister Ling, I want to find out something about Anthony.